It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Monaco, Jason Snell, Alex Lindsay, they're all in the house. We're going to talk about both Microsoft and Google made big AI announcements this week. What is Apple going to do to respond at WWDC? And a big cover story in Business Week about why Apple fumbled AI. The real question is there anything they can do to get it back? We'll also talk about Darth Vader's voice in Fortnite. No, you can't get it on the iPhone yet. All that and more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 973, recorded Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Lyle did it. It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Hello, everybody. Sorry about our tardiness. For those of you watching live, we were watching Google pretend that it has everything under control at Google I/O. Now it's time to talk Apple with Mr. Jason Snell of sixcolors.com. Good to see you, Jason.
Good to be here. Everything's fine. Under control here. Fine. How are you?
Oh dear!
It was a boring
when people say that, I worry.
Star Wars reference there. I got the Star Wars reference.
I did too.
Oh, it was a Star Wars reference. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Oh, yes.
We're gonna have company.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, fine. How are you?
Negative lockdown.
I feel like the whole tech industry is doing that right now, right?
Yeah, they are.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
We got
right.
stuff. It's good. How are you? How are you doing over there and whatever you're doing?
Andy Monaco also here at the library. Hello, Andrew.
Hey there, ho there. Yes.
Good to see you. And of course, from officehours.global, Mr. Alex Lindsay. Thank you for being very patient. We're starting a little late because of Google. I had to say, watching Google I/O, and by the way, the last thing, they saved the big announcement for the end, was these Android XR glasses they're developing with Samsung that will be sold by Warby Parker and another company whose name was weird and I've forgotten it. These are pretty impressive, and I think mostly a shot across the bow. Gentle Monster is the name of the company. Mostly a shot across the bow to Meta, because they're very much like the Meta Orion glasses. But I have to think Apple's watching too and saying, in my mind, let me just say this. This is the next iPhone. This is the next breakthrough consumer product that will change everything. When it comes out, a pair of spectacles with your prescription in it, with a heads-up display, cameras and AI built in that can describe what you're seeing. It can, put your notifications. One of the things they showed that was awesome was a map on the ground that you could see while you're walking, telling you turn left here, turn right here. All of these things, again, maybe not today, but sometime Google's going to release this, and I think this is what everybody is looking for. Yeah. Do you think it scares Apple a little bit?
Some are near. Some are far. Yeah. It's time to talk Android XR. Dun, 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 dun.
No.
Wait,
I should never have showed you my royalty statement for the Vision Pro.
No.
Now everybody's trying to get their own.
Will not.
Yeah. No. I think that a lot of companies are kind of slapping themselves in the forehead because the Ray-Bans are such an easy thing to make. They're all trying to figure out, well, we have to have a 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 year plan because we're waiting for the display technology to catch up. And they were sort of ignoring the idea that, but maybe you can have an interim product. Maybe instead of making the next iPhone, you could start off by making the next AirPods. And those are absolutely, totally doable right now. And remember that, and Google's been developing the software for a product that is still not going to exist for a few years, for a long time now. Remember,
they didn't give a date, and it could be.
Well, no, as usual. Yeah, that's the frustrating thing about Google I/O.
We've seen, one of the killer apps which they've shown now at Google I/O for a decade is simultaneous translation, and they actually were able to do it in front of the audience from Farsi to Hindi and back again. It failed halfway through, but at least the first part got done. And you could see the outlines of a really killer product. And I don't know. Is it 5 years away? Is it 3 years away? Is it 10 years away?
Since this is an Apple show, I'll just point out, like, all the reports suggest that this is what Tim Cook wants, right?
Yes. And that's why I bring it up. Yes.
And as they were building it, and so, in our Discord, somebody says it seems like Apple's just went back the wrong horse here. It's like, I don't know. It sounds like, based on the reports, this is what they wanted to build. And as they looked at the technology, they're like, this is not going to be a product for a while. It's just too soon. And the Vision Pro is kind of the backup plan of, like, why don't we start from the top down instead of the bottom up?
Do they get learnings from the Vision Pro?
I think, that Vision OS stack that's got using cameras and is using hand gestures and all of that, I think that there is huge research value and all that stuff that will benefit if we're going to do glasses-based interfaces in the next decade. The problem I see is that Apple, when they made that move, they didn't say, let's also work from the bottom up on, we'll start with sort of glasses that are AirPods and then just kind of iterate from there. Because if it's true that iteration is the best thing to do, and that's why the Vision Pro got released to the public at all, is you got to ship it and then learn from that and grow. Well, you could also ship a pair of glasses at bottom up, fairly limited, and then learn from that and grow and progress up the chain at the same time. So I don't think that this is hopeless, because I do think that all of their research into this means that Apple has got a role to play in something you wear on your face. But I am troubled by the fact that they didn't take that opportunity to build glasses like the Meta Ray-Bans that are, technology, they basically have all of it. They just didn't think there was a product there, I guess, or at least not enough to build it. And now, but I'm not sure that Apple didn't go through everything Meta and Google has gone through and been like, this is going to be awesome, but also when's it going to be? And maybe Apple...
There's battery life issues. Yeah. The heads-up display might be more tricky. Google did buy a company. Anthony Nielsen was showing us his glasses that did many of these things using laser projection on your lenses and stuff. So Google does have some technology in-house that can do this. Thank you. But I'm wondering how close we are. Google, look at Google's working with Samsung, so they've got a manufacturing giant. I do believe that if Apple wants to preserve its lead in consumer technology, this is the next iPhone, is it not? Am I wrong? And by the way, it's going to require, at least Google's does, a phone to go with it. So it sells phones and that.
Yeah. Well, the classic problem that we've been discussing for years now is that that's great for, in the people in this conversation, that's great for Alex, that's great for Jason, it's great for anybody who wears glasses every day anyway. What does it do? I mean, I have very weak, very weak nearsightedness. I use them when use my glasses when I'm driving, but otherwise it's just an option. Is this going to convince me to wear glasses all day, every day, just because I want to have that feature? And how many people are actually in the bubble where, hey, I don't need glasses at all. I don't even own a pair of non-sunglasses. But am I going to start being someone who wears glasses all the time because of this? That's the question.
And I think the hard part is that, like, when I had Google Glass and I was using, I would wear that for big chunks of time because I would be playing with it and experimenting with it. And the camera on the Google Glass, the number one reason I took the Google Glass off is because I was having a meeting that I didn't want to ever have a chance of it being broadcasted, and B, someone would ask me to take it off. And what I was doing, like including people that were connected to the product. So that was the challenge there. And I think it's the same thing. Like I think that for me, the Facebook Ray-Bans, I was just having lunch with someone sitting there talking freely, and suddenly realized that what I was looking at is someone with Ray-Bans from Facebook, and immediately clammed up. like I was just, and even though it's supposed to have a light, I was like, I'm not comfortable anymore. And so I think that's one of the challenges, that beyond all the other technical challenges, the camera sitting on someone's head all the time is still something that even I haven't gotten over.
I bet we get
I have
used to
most
that.
of these things.
We get used to a lot of
maybe.
these things. I bet we get used to it.
I think you're right. In the sense that, remember that when Google Glass came out, we were still at the end of the happy fluffy bunny period of the internet, where it was possible to do things on the internet without being absolutely 180% scrutinized, categorized, and monetized. For better or for worse, actually for worse probably. People have, I think, a they've grown a tough skin about surveillance, and that they're going to be aware about it. They're going to be able to protest when saying, "Hey, yeah, just make sure you're not recording me. Hey, I see that light on your device. I don't want to be recorded." But I don't think that when you have a device that hints that there's a camera there as opposed to a camera on your face, I think that a lot of people are going to be like, okay. I mean, I'd rather they not be wearing those glasses, but I'm not gonna force them to take it off just because I'm concerned that maybe it might be on.
Everybody will be wearing them, so you'll just have to, you'll just have to live with it.
Yeah, this is what we've already done with. I mean, we live in an environment where there are cameras everywhere. There are cameras on buildings. There are cameras in everybody's pockets. People can shoot video at the drop of the hat. And I feel very strongly that the feeling that was there when Google Glass appeared isn't there now. I think that that's the difference. Is Google Glass, people reacted really viscerally to the idea that you had a camera on your face. And with the Snap glasses and with the Meta Ray-Bans, I mean, I'm not saying people don't care and that Alex doesn't care. I'm saying culturally, I feel like everybody got over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I as someone who wears them, and I thought I would get over them, I realized that I'm not over it, and so that, I mean, that's what the only thing I observe is that even as someone who's pretty far on the front end of things, I'm just like, well, and maybe it's because I end up in a lot of conversations that are somewhat complicated, so it would be hard, from a business perspective, that I'm probably more conscious to it than others.
Bloomberg piece by Mark Gurman and Drake Bennett. You brought this one up, Andy. Why Apple still hasn't cracked AI. Insiders say continued failure to get artificial intelligence right threatens everything from the iPhone's dominance to plans for robots and other futuristic products. Does Apple watch this Google I/O? And by the way, Monday, Microsoft. Whoops, I don't know what that happened there. Microsoft showed a lot of very interesting AI stuff as well. And is Apple worried? Should Apple be worried?
I think
I would be.
I think they should. Not in a this is a life-ending incident. It's not like the future of the company is hinging on the success of their AI. But it's going to if we wind up in a world 3 or 4 years from now when people expect that it doesn't matter that this is a noisy environment, I can actually read the captions of someone who's speaking to me or what's going on in that TV up there, all this sort of stuff. If Apple has an AI that can just sort of kind of do it, but it doesn't really work all that well, versus Google is iterating on like its 10th year of its speech to text system, and it's not just getting it in noisy environments, it's not just getting it in any sort of accent that might trip up another AI, but it's also getting pretty much every language that anybody who travels within 10,000 miles of home would ever encounter. That's the sort of thing that would make Apple look like it's the inferior product. When we look at Apple design, like there are people who are into design say, oh, well, look, let's compare this iPhone 15 to the latest Samsung, and you see where the grill for the speaker is perfectly centered vertically and horizontally between those two screws, whereas on the Samsung it's just off kilter, and you can see like there's sort of a gap in the panels right there, and that's the difference between Apple design and Samsung design or whatever design. This could be the exact same difference, only against Apple's favor, where it kind of works but not really, versus no, I have every expectation this is not only going to work, but it's also going to work pretty much flawlessly.
From the Bloomberg piece, 7 years after Ginandrea arrived, the big coup, getting the Google AI guy, the optimism he brought with him is gone. Apple's AI has only fallen further behind since OpenAI's ChatGPT software burst into the public consciousness. Every major tech company has accelerated its efforts to develop the large language models that power such programs. I think it's beyond LLMs at this point, by the way. Incorporate them into voice assistants and other tools, hype them to consumers. It's not that Google is in the lead by any means. In fact, Google is facing existential threats from companies like Perplexity and OpenAI. This is their response to them. But boy, it doesn't look like Apple's even in the game.
Well, I think that there's a lot more at stake for Google as well. I mean, Google, their search is existential. Like, this is what pays for everything. I mean, Google has a lot of other little projects, but the thing that pays for Google is AdWords, and their ad networks. And so something that, like, I know that my use of Google has dropped 80%, 90% since I started using ChatGPT, that's an existential threat because they're selling something that is directly impacted by AI, where I think Apple, not yet. They're selling hardware. So I think that's a different situation. I do think that Apple's probably what we'll probably see next month or soon after is they're going to relax, I think, their pressure valve, which is make it easier for people to use ChatGPT or Gemini or other things on the platform. Yeah. That kind of takes a lot of pressure off of it. It's not like Apple users are ready to buy another piece of hardware. So that's not, if you just make it easy for them. I mean, for me, it's a little bit of a lift. I have to push a button and give say, hey, Shlomo, start chat. And now I'm in ChatGPT and I'm asking questions and so on and so forth, but it's not fully integrated into the rest of my experience. And that's what, if Apple just lets me tie in ChatGPT into my experience, as an Apple user, I don't know when they need to fix that. That it gives them 2, 3, 4, 5 years of if the AI if they just figure out how to seamlessly integrate the AI into it. Is there a long-term solution that they could provide that is different than everybody else's? Absolutely, inside of a private thing, inside of the hardware. But I think that can be slowly cooked correctly while most of us are really happy with what we have in front of us.
One of the ways Apple's responding, Jason, I'll just put the link to today's Gurman piece in our Discord, they've announced today that they're going to open their AI models to developers.
It's not announced, it's a report, right? It's going to be a WWDC thing.
This is going to be a WWDC.
This is a Gurman scoop, but this is a 1-2 punch, right? So punch one, and this is mentioned in that Bloomberg Business Week feature, is that Apple is trying to improve its own models, right? And one of the things that they're going to need to change is their annual cycle, because according to that feature, Apple feels like their foundational model in the last year plus has gotten way better, and they feel that it's in the realm of a ChatGPT at this point. Now, is that true or is that a pipe dream? I don't know, but I'm sure it's better, right? Because that company has been acting like they've been on fire for the last year and a half about AI. So I'm sure that their model is better. And when you see how fast new AI models get released, and Apple doesn't seem to be doing that, right? So maybe in the background they've got a new model that's better, but that they're also, at least in Europe and maybe elsewhere, they're we know that Gemini is the worst kept secret, right? Everybody's saying oh, that'll be nice when Gemini is on iPhones. It's well, yeah, okay, that's going to happen. And there may be others. And to Alex's point, maybe it will be easier to trigger them, whether they're taking over for Siri or whether you're just sort of choosing which world knowledge engine Siri uses. Either way, that you could get something there. But Apple's model is important. And so this story today is saying something that a lot of people were writing about and talking about a few months ago, which is one of Apple's great advantages is the App Store and the app market, and the fact that people write apps that are on Apple's platforms. What you want to do is make your platform more open to using AI features. And so this report says Apple is building APIs for app developers to use Apple's on-device models. And this is big because if you're an app developer, you can ship an on-device model, but it'll get killed because it's using too many resources, right? That really needs to be an API from the operating system. And according to Mark Gurman, that's what they're building. And there are a lot of developers who will look at that and say, oh, this is so great because now I can just use the foundational model on the device, assuming it's okay, assuming it's good enough. We have to assume that, but its place as being an Apple model and having the APIs for it means that potentially opens up some interesting things for app developers to do. So it's a 1-2 punch, right? It's you want to be open if you're Apple to the third-party AI world because they are pushing so fast, and it is very hard for Apple, I think, to keep up there, especially in the short term. And then the second part of it is, can you use your platform advantage to say, let's empower a bunch of app developers to do interesting things with AI models. The example I always use is Apple can afford to take its podcast backend and transcribe every podcast and put transcriptions in Apple Podcasts, which they did. But if you're Marco Arment, a single person who writes a podcast app, you can't do that. But what he could potentially do is let all Overcast users run a transcription engine in the background, transcribe their podcasts, and upload them to a shared server so that you create a cloud of transcripts. Like, that's a thing theoretically he could do, but he's never going to put his own transcription engine on phones. It's just, it doesn't make sense. So like so to answer the big question, which is like, does Apple care? Is Apple trying? It seems like Apple behind the scenes is trying literally everything. I think the question is it enough? Will it work? Are they the right things? Those are the things we don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of the Lindsay plan, which is that Apple, actually, in some ways, Microsoft's in a similar situation. They have their own local models like Phi, which they promote, but they're also very quick to say, but look, you can use everything else. They announced on Monday you can use Grok if you want on Azure. I think Alex is probably right that well, I don't know. Apple, this is a big crisis. I think one of the things we learned from the Epic trial and from the Google trial is that I believe there's a schism in Apple leadership about how to address this.
Yeah.
Like one group says, no, we got to keep doing what we've been doing, which is a closed ecosystem. We control it all. We're going to protect people's privacy. Another group saying this strategy is failing now, and we have to start opening up.
Well, and this is always the challenge when you have a large company that's making a lot of money in one place. It's really hard for them to put that in any way at risk, because there are companies that have done both things, which is that they jumped to something new and the rock wasn't there, or they missed the rock when they jumped. And then there's other companies like Kodak is a good example of something that had a lot of challenges because they saw the digital revolution before everybody else. They just didn't act because they had this huge investment in film.
No, worst. They did act. They put out digital cameras. They bought Ophoto. They did act, but it wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough because they were always conflicted. Like
their model was based on the profits of developing and film.
Right. It was just very hard for them to see how to get to the other side of that. And that's always the issue that large movers have. These big is that someone else is going to do something. And again, Apple, I think what makes it very challenging for AI is that Apple's constantly worried about their brand and constantly worried about the it's safe and it's going to be easy to use. And when you're using AI all day, you're used to it just failing I'm used to AI for me fails about half the time. Like something is not right about what it just said.
And we don't mind. We go forward.
We understand that's the nature of the tool. Yeah.
Yeah, we understand the precision. Yeah, the precision of the.
It's not magic.
You don't expect accuracy beyond the precision of the device, and so you're constantly working on that process. And so, but Apple, that is like outside of Apple's little world, like to be wrong half the time. But you can't innovate without failure. Yeah. And it's very hard for them to do that.
And knowing that that's part of, it's a tool, and that part of the tool is failure, and that you deal with failure, and that's outside of Apple's. This is almost like a perfect storm of things that modern Apple, it's in its blind spot, right? And in a lot of different ways. And I think that Alex's point about, you have that stream of income, and do you jump? And there are definitely people at Apple who just still believe that, ChatGPT and its ilk are never going to be good, and they're overhyped, and that this is all going to blow over. But the problem with that is this is a company that's spent billions of dollars on what if the next big thing is a car, or what if the next big thing is goggles, and yet they don't seem to have put any money into, or at least not a lot, into what if LLMs are the next big thing until it was too late. And that's a sin. In a way, I don't know whether it's a mortal sin or not, but it's definitely a sin on their part. So I don't know what they do, but I think the key is it's absurd to look at something like Siri and say, what's the right thing for Apple's customers? Is it to let them choose from the various agents that are out there, the various voice-activated or text-based agents that are out there, and choose what they want to use? Or is the right answer for Apple's customers to be to not let them choose and lock them into whatever Apple does, even if it's way behind everybody else? Yeah. Like, there's an obvious answer here, but today's Apple is all about locking things down and not giving people choices because they're afraid. And that's the part that bothers me the most is I think Apple has every opportunity to compete for payments and like to compete in all these different areas to compete, and it's got the home field advantage. But it feels like that's not enough. If it can just prevent everybody from seeing what it's like on the other side of the fence, that's going to be even better. And like it's bad. It's bad for Apple's customers. Bottom line.
Yeah, there was a part of the reporting in Bloomberg this week. This wasn't just Gurman. This was a team effort about what's going on inside. Part of it was made the story that Craig Federighi himself was part of the problem early on, because he was looking at LLMs. People were talking to him about LLMs. He didn't see where that could play a role in Apple. And this is, I wonder if this isn't part of Apple's institutional problem with certain kinds of creativity, where if you pitch them, here is a piece of hardware, there are a pair of magic goggles that will allow you to see dancing elephants on the middle of your desk. Wow, great hardware, let's do it. Here is the idea for a car. It could be designed like a car, and the dashboard will be like one big iPhone and will be self-driving. Wow, that's a great piece of hardware, let's build it. When you say, here is a piece of software that's going to take billions of dollars and years of effort, it is electrons that are glued together in ways that can do some kind of cool things that can have lots of different improving effects on lots of different things across an operating system and apps and third-party apps. That's a divide. It's not a divide by zero error, but it's not something they're instinctivally going to understand. Oh, that's not a product? Oh.
Well, and I think that part of the problem is that what Apple has gotten really good at is taking a market that is already existing, but not very good at what it does, and leveraging it with design and interface. So if you look at the phone was a pretty big market already. It was, but it was just, no one loved their phone. They just hated the one that they had less than all the other ones that they had. And so like I had a Trio. It's not like I was in love with my Trio before. That was the last phone I had before the iPhone. But Apple fixed it really quickly. Same thing with the iPod. Same thing with the watch. Same thing. Like they build things that are easier to use. They're simpler. They're safer. They're all those other things. The problem is that AI it's still a very volatile market, and they just don't know where to like. It's not like cars. I think made sense to them because there's very few people that I know that really love their car.
There's an interesting anecdote in this Business Week piece. It says Steve Jobs wasn't particularly interested in building search engines, intelligence or otherwise. He believed Apple's job was to curate and show customers what they should want.
Yeah.
But
Steve.
Then he found Siri.
Yeah.
And Dag Kitlaus, who created it outside of Apple, it was a standalone company, said the original concept was for a do engine. The ultimate vision was you could talk to the internet and your assistant would just handle everything for you. Sound familiar? This is exactly what Google's proposing today. And so Steve said, wait a minute, hold on. He loved this. Soon after he started using Siri, he phoned Kitlaus, invited him and his co-founders over to his house. During a 3-hour chat, Jobs offered to buy the company. When Kitlaus balked, Jobs called him 24 days in a row.
Yep.
Every day for 24 days saying, I want you. I want to buy you. How about
Steve,
now?
how about now?
One can argue that this weekend is a negotiating position.
Yeah. Kitlaus says, I met with him every week until he no longer could for health reasons. He made Siri his personal project. Right. Jobs got it.
He got it. He did. And the do engine, I think, is there. And the idea that Apple would kind of, because his goal was not like, oh, we need to curate and that we need to hide the world from our users. His idea was always computer for the rest of us, right? I feel like Steve Jobs very much, especially...
A bicycle for the mind. Yeah.
Exactly. And his relationship, even going back to Woz, like where Woz was the technical guy, Woz knew all the technical detail, but Steve was not concerned about that. He was more concerned about how do we reach people? This technology is amazing, but most people can't use it. And so how do we make it so they can? And that was always the lens, I think, through which he saw the world of technology for certain. And so you look at this and it's a very similar approach, which is, why don't is there anything I can not do or not do easily on a computer or a phone or whatever that I could just tell it what I want and then it figures it out? Like that is kind of the goal is, we all have fun here. We're all tech nerds. We have fun playing with technology. But for most people, it's a means to an end.
Right.
And if you could, the more you can make it so that anything technology can do, any person can do by just expressing what they need the end result to be, you win. And Jobs knew that. And, you know, he had the misfortune in some ways of being born in an era where the computer tech was so primitive that, you know, the original Mac was the best he could do. And then the iMac was the best he could do. And the original iPhone was the best he could do. But it's not surprising to me that he saw something like Siri and is like, oh, right. At least like now you could just ask it things and it'll do it. And that's so much better for a lot of, not for everything, you know. I wouldn't want to voice navigate maybe like a spreadsheet that I've got or my planning documents or something. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, but like I really appreciate that idea. And I would say it is, because it is a Steve Jobs thing, it is fundamentally Apple-like of like, how do we make things easier? The sad thing is, of course, that whole presentation thing that they never ended up shipping, featuring app intents and personalized Siri using a semantic index on your device, that is a really Apple vision of how this stuff could work. It's just that they couldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it. I don't know if they couldn't or wouldn't.
Well, they couldn't. It sounds like they're still working on it, but that's one of the great mysteries of WWDC, right? It's like, what are they going to actually say that they can ship now?
According to this article, by the way, really, thank you for bringing it up because it's really interesting. According to this article, Tim was one of Apple's biggest believers in AI. He was constantly frustrated that Siri lagged behind Alexa. So it wasn't from the top that this failed. He brought in Jandrea. Something went wrong. I'm not sure what went wrong. I don't know if maybe it was Craig Federighi, who the article says was reluctant to make large investments in AI. He didn't see it as a core capability for computers or mobile devices. Wrong. Everything we've seen, by the way, this week at Microsoft and Google was about talking to your spreadsheet. It was at that level of you're going to talk to your computer and it's going to do what you want, whether it's fix the spreadsheet or order donuts, it's going to do it for you. Agentic AI is what
that's the dream, right? Like the computers don't exist to be used as computers. They exist to help us do things in life. If you can, if there's a better way to get a computer to do a thing, then you should do that, right?
100%. Apple was at the forefront of a couple of the most important transitions in user experience, from command line interfaces to pull down menus and windows and icons, and then from clicks and taps with mouses to actual multi-touch. The third wave seems to be just ask your computer what you want it to do. It does it, and it doesn't seem like they're ready for that transition. One of the more interesting things from the Google I/O today was Google basically saying we've got our AI features for Google Search, and we're going to be making them a little bit more prominent, where it will be an agentic version of Google Search, where you ask it questions and it will basically be doing the search queries for you. And that is a very, very good plan. Google Search conventional Google Search was actually up, I think, 12% last year. So it's not as though there's a lot of information. There's a lot of data about it dying. But Google sees the writing on the wall, and they're already saying, "Well,
they've added an AI mode tab to the Google search results. They did it today.
That's what they're.
It's Perplexity, basically.
I've had it in Google Labs for a while now. But basically, to change the paradigm of Google Search from I have to know what the search terms to use, because I have to give it a good target. I have to know the query language. I also have to know how to skim past all the stuff that's trying to get my attention in the search results and get to the good stuff. To no, we'll do it all for you. Basically, it will go from we're changing Google Search from a search engine to a research engine that has a powerful search engine behind it. This is the sort of stuff where you don't have to convince somebody to get a brand new app. You don't have to get them to change the way that they work. Google is already the concierge for most of the world to the internet, and now that concierge will not at least fight them so much on trying to get the information and the results that they want. That's the sort of stuff that Apple has to make sure that they're not missing the boat on that. If people start expecting, hey, look, why is it that I have to like actually type in a backslash command to use this spreadsheet? That's what kind of killed command lines and multiplan and Lotus 1-2-3 in the 80s. They could be heading into a place where, wow, why do I actually have to give this phone a list of instructions and go through them step by step to get something done? I just want to get all of the data about our upcoming weekend trip and make sure that it's sent over to all the people who are going to the trip with me. Why do I have to like actually open an email client and go into these apps and cut, copy, and paste and bedlam?
So this article, I guess my conclusion from this article is that Apple is culturally not prepared for this new world of AI, and that's fundamentally the problem. This doesn't
That would be
match
scary if it were true.
Apple's culture. And if it's true, it's really a problem.
Well, I still think that Google is facing a much more existential problem, which is that they have, and I think that they're doing a great job at moving down the path, but their situation, they're much closer to their horizon of events than Apple. Apple's selling hardware to people who don't really want to use some other hardware. And so there's going to be they got a long trail before people start like peeling off for just one product. If they make it make the other AI tools more available. For Google, the problem is that you have people using ChatGPT and other things to figure things out instead of searching. But the other thing is you solve that problem and you make it great. I mean, the demos this morning on Google I/O were stunning. But the problem is now I'm sitting there talking to Google and asking it questions, and it's not giving me ads.
So one of the problems, and we talked about this,
if it starts giving me ads, I'll be like, what the what?
We talked about this in the stream. One of the problems all these companies have, these are all fungible products. There's no lock-in. If you don't like what Gemini gave you, you just go to Anthropic. If you don't like what Anthropic, and so in fact, one of the reasons I use Perplexity is I could choose the model from all of the above, and I can use whichever one that works for the moment.
Isn't that an advantage for Apple then?
Maybe it is. So what Google's clearly trying to do, and OpenAI has been doing this too, is Google said, because of all the context, this is exactly Apple's strength, all the context we have about you from the apps you use and so forth, we can feed that into the AI. We know more about you. And that's the sticky part is, well, you're building up this body of knowledge, this expertise in Gemini. And so you're going to stay with Google. And Apple has that same opportunity. But for some reason, they are struggling. I think the telling paragraph from this article, I thought, was it's an example of how AI is proving to be a technology that doesn't play to Apple's strengths. The usual playbook, a longtime executive says, is we're late. We have over 1 billion users. We're going to grind it out, and we're going to beat everyone. But this strategy isn't going to work this time.
Yeah. So this is the real question for me. Is it's very clear that culturally, Apple was incapable of essentially seeing this happening, that John, Gian, and Andrea, they saw that machine learning was going to be big. They did. They actually did. They built it into their silicon. They built it into a whole bunch of features. But the LLM thing in particular, they just were like, no, that's not what we do. It's not going to be a thing. And they missed an important thing. The question is, there were all those reports about how, like I guess a couple of years ago now, they had that panic moment of like, oh no, we missed this. And how do they respond? And how do they build those models? And are the models that they're going to talk about in June going to be appreciably better than the models that they had last summer? Because that's where we are now. It's not, did Apple fail to respond properly to this? That we know the answer, they did. The question is, are there ways for Apple to change their culture to adapt to how LLM stuff works? And how do you alter your vision of like what a product is and what third parties you integrate and all of those things in a way that keeps you Apple, but that doesn't make your products feel irrelevant? And I know that some people have said Apple will be able to restructure and do this internally. I think other people have said they're probably going to go need to buy somebody at some point and get an infusion of a different culture on the AI side. But that, I think the jury's still out, right? Because I think that this is a case where we're still dealing with the ramifications of Apple being so late to the party. And I mean, who knows? Like that Bloomberg Business Week article says they feel like their models have made a lot of progress, but their models are unreleased because nobody's seen them because Apple keeps secrets. So we don't know where they are in that, and they may be delusional or it might be real. But like that's the great mystery right now is like we know they know that they blew it, but we don't know quite what they've done, and it's a real challenge for them. That there's no doubt about it. Like it is perfectly not what they're good at.
Well, the tension is building. June 9th, WWDC. We will cover the keynote as we have a little differently from the past. The way we did it today with Google I/O, yesterday with Microsoft's build, is in the club only, and that's because Apple will take us down, and we're afraid of losing our Google YouTube account as well as our Twitch account because of takedowns. So we no longer stream in public. If you want to watch our coverage, Mike and I will be covering the Apple event June 9th. You need to join the club for $7 a month. You get a lot of other benefits, including ad-free versions of all the shows. But that's how we're going to do it. I'm sorry, I wish we didn't have to do it. I'd much prefer to do it publicly, but that's how we're going to have to do it. And I think there will be a lot of interest in what Apple announces on Monday, June 9th, and we will talk all about it for you on MacBreak Weekly the next day. We're going to take a little break. Lots more to talk about. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Thank you for being here. Our show today brought to you by Spaceship. Oh, I love Spaceship. It is the modern domain and web platform. So modern that simplifies the process of choosing, purchasing, and managing domain names and web products. Let me just talk. We've been talking about them for a while. Let me talk about what they've been up to recently. It starts with below market prices for domain registration. So you're already saving just when you register a domain. But you don't want to stop there because they have an amazing, innovative features for domain management. They just launched Thunderbolt. This is a pioneering app where you use your domain to chat, message, and video call instead of a phone number or an email address. Doesn't that make sense? Shouldn't your presence on the web be your domain name? Right? No. And I got to talk about this too, because security is a big issue. We hate hackers, right? With other messaging apps, how do you log in? Your email, your password makes your account more vulnerable to hacking if you don't practice proper password hygiene. Well, at Thunderbolt, your domain ownership is verified. Messages are end-to-end encrypted. They're not stored on Thunderbolt servers ever. And it's really simple. This is a new app, very exciting for domain owners who value privacy and are looking for a secure way to communicate. I actually want to move all my domains now over to Spaceship. This is really cool. They also have so many other features, but let's talk about Thunderbolt right now. Visit the App Store. Get the Thunderbolt app from Spaceship now. They surprised me. They came up with this, and I had talked with them a couple of weeks ago. They didn't mention a word. This is really interesting. The Thunderbolt app from Spaceship, or go to Spaceship. Actually, I'd prefer if you did this. Go to spaceship.com/twit. You can see a QR code there and download the app, but you'll also get exclusive deals on domains and more. Spaceship.com/twit. We thank you so much. Thunderbolt's very exciting, powered by Spaceship. These guys really are doing some interesting stuff. Spaceship.com/twit. We thank them for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Well, we do have the WWDC message stickers, so there's that.
They shipped. Hey,
they shipped something. I like
and all the invitations went out, and they did the official that it's at 10 a.m. on the Monday,
we
and
now
all
know
of those things.
All that. Okay. By the way, this octopus on a keyboard, they're going to have a little bit of a problem because Google has shipped something called, let me see if I have it here. I don't. Jules, which is an octopus on a keyboard. It's an AI coding assistant on GitHub.
Love it.
So, well, okay, there's only so many octopi in the world.
Hey, at least they're developing their own octopus. They understand that this is going to be important 5 years from now.
Everybody needs an octopus.
That's right. You just want to hedge your bets. What if in the future the octopus replaces the iPhone?
Yeah.
You gotta be there with an Apple octopus. It's very
I just
important.
don't see the octopus as a product though. It's a feature. It's not a product. It's a feature.
I mean,
Jason, you've been really
vision.
thinking about this whole thing. I mean, you've got a great piece at 6 Colors. How will Apple rethink AI features for WWDC?
Yeah, I mean, inspired in part by our conversations here, and it's that Apollo 13 image that I use, which is it's that moment. So you're Apple, and you're taking over. You're Mike Rockwell, the guy who was in charge of the Vision Pro, and you got put in charge of Siri, and you're brought into Craig Federighi's group, and John Gianandrea is being sort of moved to just a research role more than anything else, model development, and like you survey the damage, right? Like, what now? And the moment that I kept thinking is that Apollo 13 moment where Ed Harris says, what have we got on the spaceship that's good? Right? Like, where it's like, let's stop doing damage. Because and it's really for Siri and AI in general, it's like, let's stop doing damage control. Let's look at this, as he says in the movie, from the perspective of status. Let's look at it from the other direction, which is
what we got?
Works? What do we got? And then you move into the next level, which is like, what do we got that we can ship? We can announce in June and we know we can ship, because if we got burned last year, so we got to change our rules about that. What are we going to announce? That Bloomberg Business Week story we've been talking about, one of the most interesting things in there suggests that Apple is going to change how it approaches promising new features, and it's not going to announce features that it can't ship in a few months.
There's a lot of blame on Jaws in the marketing department, isn't there? That they overpromised last time.
Well, I mean, somebody made the decision to heavily market those features that weren't shipping, and some of them that didn't ship. And if it's Jaws, then it's Jaws' fault. Like, I mean, I'm sure the marketing people would say we were assured that if we were going to announce a feature, it was going to ship, right? Like, I mean, that
somebody,
you can point fingers there, but like, I think that's the challenge of the people who are in charge of AI and Siri right now is, I'm sure what they want to do is say, yes, LLM Siri is coming, but also last year they've said things were coming and they couldn't ship them, so they're going to probably need to not say that, or they're going to be able to hedge it and say, like, we are working on it, but we don't have anything to announce right now with details. And this is that Apollo 13 kind of thing of like, you got to triage, like, what can we do? What can we bring in partners? What can we do with that? Can we open it up to third-party app developers? Can we bring in that? And it's like, I don't envy them that challenge, because that is a huge challenge of kind of picking up the pieces after a couple different disasters and saying, all right, what do we go out to the world with in June? And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing in whatever it is, 3 weeks, is what on the spaceship is good. Like, I mean, what is it? What do you guys know? So what is it? What are you guys capable of announcing with confidence? Because everybody's going to be skeptical after last year. So what are they capable of saying, this is what we're doing next?
When you wrote that, hold on a second.
Ahead,
before you wrote that article, did you know that the day after you wrote that article, the guy who solved that problem passed away?
Yeah.
Did you know?
Oh, there was a story. Well,
the guy who made this.
It's Smiley.
For this.
Here's the picture of him with duct tape.
Yeah, that's
garbage bags.
So that's for the CO2 scrubbers, and that was one of the classic Apollo 13 moments. And I'll shout out, my wife's grandfather worked for the contractor that built those systems, so they were in a room in California working on that same problem, trying to figure out how to do the CO2 scrubbers. So
Ed Smiley, the engineer who figured out how to do it with duct tape, passed away the day after you wrote your article.
That's the inspirational part of the Apollo 13 story, is that was a complete disaster that happened in space, and everybody came home safely, and it was due to a lot of ingenuity. And that's why I think it's one of the classic troubleshooting stories of technology is thinking about, and in that moment, not to Apollo 13 is one of my favorite movies, and I have to tell young people now, it literally all happened. Like, it's not amazing. It's not made up. And if you get a chance to watch the Blu-ray or the DVD of it, there's a commentary track you can watch where Jim Lovell and his wife literally talk about what really happened compared to the movie. It's one of the most amazing commentary tracks I've ever seen. But the idea that in that moment, Gene Kranz, through the flight controller, played by Ed Harris, in real life too, had that moment of like, let's not.
What do we got?
Let's not make it worse by guessing. He says, let's look at this from a perspective of status. What do we have that's good? And it's really like, and then that famous line, let's work the problem, people. It's like, let's take the emotion out of it. Let's look at this coldly. We know that it's bad, but like, we need to start thinking about it in a methodical way so that we can get to the solution. And no lives at risk for Apple. So I don't want to make the parallel too strong, but there is, as a technical exercise, there must have been a moment where those people came into a room and were like, oh boy, Apple Intelligence and Siri, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You can't try to solve the problem by unstirring the tanks. That's not going to happen. You have to move forward from there. And I think that one of the difficulties was that Apple was in the same situation in 2024 at WWDC that I think Google was in 2023 at Google I/O, where AI became an app. OpenAI put the world on its ear with ChatGPT. Anybody who cannot do something like that or cannot demonstrate something like that runs the risk of being pegged as someone who is clueless and is technically far behind. And they had to basically, if not ship something then and there, explain that, no, we are aware of this and we have the capability and here's what we're building.
To be fair, even the folks at OpenAI were shocked at the capabilities 100%. Of ChatGPT 3.
Yeah.
I mean, they did not expect it. It took everybody in Silicon Valley.
And remember that this is based on the research that Google first published in 2014.
Right.
And now there's stories came out maybe defensively that, well, we had the capability of doing this, but we were concerned that the model that we had wasn't good enough for what we would be selling it. They were demonstrating a lot of things at I/O about, well, here's a demo of what this could work like, but we're not ready to actually put this into human hands yet. But it's exactly the problem when Apple felt that Apple is the classic model of Apple, and I think one of the problems that we all have is thinking that the classic model of Apple that got solidified in people's minds in 2002, 2003 is still operative. The classic model is that you never hear anything from Apple until the thing is ready, until they demo it and they're shipping it and they got a launch date. And now they were in a position where they had to demo something that they were planning on doing and that they hoped would be ready by a timetable that everybody in the conference room decided to sign off on because, okay, we have to choose a launch date. Let's choose this date. They didn't, and they felt as though they didn't have the ability to simply say, "We're working on this. We think this is very," in Tim Cook's words, "We think this is really interesting and very exciting, and we have nothing to announce at this time." And they won't be able to get away with exactly that in 2025. But hopefully they have the next time that they're about to, again, try to unstir the tanks, they'll think back to, that did not work for us the last time. Well, perhaps we should be a little bit more circumspect.
And hopefully they can just be calm. The hard part is that, folks got wound up, and you see this in many companies, and in it takes a handful of people to freak out to get everybody else running around like they're, head, like chickens with their head cut off, the issue is I think that they panicked over something they didn't get very far, so they didn't need to do any of this. Here they are with a failure instead of non-action, and they could have. They had plenty of time. I have 600 movies in my Apple TV. I use Notes on all my machines. I have an Apple account. I'm not going anywhere. And so the thing is Apple has plenty of time to they had not forever, but they had plenty of time to do this. They didn't need, it was just such an unforced error last year to go down this path and panic when there was nothing to panic about, because the lock-in that Apple has is so much deeper than what Google has. Because I love Google. I love Google Search. It's what I use for search. And I immediately shifted over to something else because it was producing a better product very, very quickly. And so that's a problem for Google. That's not, but I was still doing all of these things, the Google and the ChatGPT on my Mac and on my phone and on my, and so I think if Apple simply had pivoted last year to saying we can make it really easy for ChatGPT to tie into what you're doing, or Claude or Gemini, probably couldn't be Gemini because of the antitrust stuff. But if they just said, we're going to make this available and we're working on something bigger that's going to be even better, but this is what we're doing today, they would have been fine. And I think that they'd be fine if they did that this year. I think that they have plenty of time. And I think the biggest thing that will screw up Apple is to panic and rush.
Well, we'll find out. I'm excited now. June 9th is going to be a big, big moment. And of course, there's lots of other things Apple could talk about, like the App Store nightmare that is unfolding as we speak. Apple has agreed to, or has decided to appeal that. And as a result, they are telling Epic, Yeah, no, we're going to wait and see what the judge says before we put Fortnite on the App Store. They're blocking Fortnite. Epic says, okay, on Friday, they sent a letter to the judge accusing Apple of refusing to consider its Fortnite submission, calling it, quote, Apple's latest attempt, them's fighting words, to circumvent this court's injunction and this court's authority. Rana.
Yeah. Apple hopefully can tap into some of the font of goodwill they've built with that particular judge.
Judge Rogers is going to not be happy.
Her response is very much like writing "See Me" after class on a paper and handing it out to a student. It's basically, look, you two should be able to work this out. And if you can't, whoever at Apple is responsible for not working it out must appear before me on a couple of Mondays from now and explain themselves. And it's look, how good are you guys at reading signals? Okay.
That was the chilling part of the response, was basically because remember in the previous order they said, okay, I'm going to be forwarding this for possible criminal charges against this specific person who lied under oath. Now she's like, you're going to give me a name. Dude, you're going to give me a name so that if I order you guys to do something and it doesn't happen. Yeah.
So TechCrunch said that the judge is in effect ordering Apple to approve Fortnite. Is that your sense of this?
I think they're basically saying, the judge is saying you should be able to work this out without me. But if you can't, then let's talk about it. And I think that if I'm Apple's attorneys, what I would probably say is something like, our argument is not your order about purchase rules in the store. Our argument is with Epic, which stems from them violating those terms and conditions back in the day and us not trusting them, and that our ban is still in place, and that you haven't said anything about whether we could allow it or not. I think the judge, just as a non-lawyer human being, I think the judge is not going to be super sympathetic to that argument, when what Epic is really trying to do here is say, we just want to be in the U.S. store following the rules that are in place in the U.S. store, and you should let us back in because the thing you banned us for isn't disallowed anymore, and so let us in. I think it's going to be a tough one for Apple to win, even though technically they have an argument. It seems like it's too far for them to go.
So the judge wrote that Apple contends that it can ignore this court's order, having not received a stay from the Ninth Circuit, even though its request was filed 12 days ago. This came out yesterday.
Yeah.
Obviously, Apple is fully capable of resolving this issue without further briefing or a hearing. However, if you don't figure it out,
we'll give you one.
And this is the thing. This is the key part of this. The Apple official who is personally responsible for ensuring compliance shall personally appear at the hearing on Tuesday. Which is basically saying you're somebody in trouble here, and I want names.
Who's that new intern? Lyle, congratulations! You just got promoted to chief counsel on this case.
Just going to Oakland on Monday.
And judge continues. Any opposition brief shall be filed by Wednesday, by tomorrow, and shall identify by name the Apple official referenced above.
Yeah, and the hard part is that the judges also understands what Apple's doing from a legal perspective. Is they want a legal case that they can appeal, and so the judge doesn't want them to do that. They've been losing these, so they may continue to lose those. But
somebody's going to get a contempt order on the 27th, right?
Not necessarily.
Apple did ask for a response to the injunction by X date, so I think they were just waiting out the clock. I think by sometime next week, I think it is, or the end of this week.
Yeah, but the main thing is they need the court action to happen so that they can take it and appeal it. So what would happen is that once you put that into the spin, what it means is that they can say the court she then requires them to do it, but she made that order. It's now a court action. It can now go to Ninth Court of Appeals. And if for somehow Apple wins, because remember, each one of these is its own case. Now she's mad about all of it. But an appeals court might look at it and go, well, they need to open up the thing because that's what was ruled. But in this case, they have the right to tell someone who acted in bad faith back then. They have the right to do that. And a court and a another court above her may decide that that's the case,
What-
and then pull that back, and then they'll immediately pull that app out of the store.
What you risk, though, if you're Apple, is by pressing this, the judge orders you to put that app in the App Store and to unreject and unban them, setting a precedent that in the future could possibly mean that Apple no longer really has control over what goes in the App Store or not. Like, that's the
If
danger.
they lost the appeal. Yeah, if they
right,
lose
on the other
appeal.
side of it. So the question is, it's a little like a poker game. It's like, do you
always-
want to push it that far, or do you want to essentially negotiate with Epic? Because I think one of the issues here is that Epic doesn't have a non-App Store or an in-app purchase version of Fortnite anymore. Basically, they have, you want to buy the stuff, you buy it from Epic outside of the app. And if Apple wins its case or gets an injunction or gets the injunction overturned, I guess technically, then what happens to Fortnite? And I think that would be a thing that Apple could argue in court, but they could also just argue with Epic and say, look, we'll let you back in, but if this thing gets overturned, you got 24 hours to put in-app purchase in your app, or it's out of the App Store. And because I think that's every Kindle, every other country but the US, that thing is, there's a switch that's flipped and you can't buy external web links, but in the US you can. There's a fallback position for everybody else, but there isn't a fallback position, I don't believe, for Fortnite. It's not engineered to do it anymore.
Well, and I think
that would be the argument.
I think also Apple is very resistant. If they feel like they have some chance in court, I think they're very resistant to putting Fortnite back in, because most Apple iPhone users forgot that Fortnite existed. And so they don't
they're
really
being
care, or they've done
reminded
something
now,
else.
right? I mean,
well, they're being reminded now, but they haven't
Their
started
kids are
playing
reminding
it. But
Yeah,
but they
for
haven't
sure.
started playing it yet. So the thing is that once they play it and then it gets pulled out again,
That's leverage for Epic. Yeah,
that's
for
leverage.
sure.
So the thing is that I think Apple will do pretty much everything it feels it can do within the legal limits, even if someone spends a couple nights in jail, to keep Fortnite out of it.
Poor Lyle.
Lyle.
Lyle the
Lyle's-
intern.
And by the way,
Lyle
your
the
prison time is
intern.
going to be counting against your personal days.
It's okay. He's going to pack pajamas and a toothbrush. It'll
I
be
think
fine.
they'll offer him double time. We'll offer you double time for those days.
Yeah,
Pay you a whole 24.
and remember that part of the Apple strategy when they filed this emergency stay, part of their argument was that, hey, by keeping Epic out of the App Store, that means that there's no reason for you, court, not to give us an emergency stay, because it's not as though Epic's being harmed by an extra few months of being kept out of the App Store. They're already generating no income from us. So
Once the kids see Darth Vader talking bad words in Fortnite in James Earl Jones'
Its
voice,
strategic value is very well. Say it again. Hawk Tour.
Darth Vader says Hawk Tua in the new Fortnite. And the SAG-AFTRA is not happy about it, by the way. Even though James Earl Jones, who's the voice of Darth Vader's estate, his family authorized the AI use of his voice, and presumably this is one of those legitimate uses. SAG-AFTRA says it violates fair labor practices.
Well, basically, they're arguing that Epic has an agreement with SAG-AFTRA that basically prohibits them from doing this, and that the complaint
Because there's a strike on right now.
Yeah, exactly. The complaint they filed with the National Labor Board was basically that they did not come to us first, and they did not attempt to negotiate a way through this. And so
Well,
that's
Epic's
their big
already got the
complaint.
lawyers in the building. They just go down the
Exactly.
hall on this
They're-
one, and yeah.
They got the hotel at the Holiday Inn next door. They're going to
already
be staying there for another couple
Holy
weeks.
cow!
But fun fact: the AI is the chatbot part of that is actually Gemini, Google Gemini 2.0.
Oh, interesting. That's
And
how
they're using
how you
11
get to say
Labs voice
Hawk Tua,
technology.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. They were getting to say all sorts of bad words. It sounds pretty good.
Well, I mean, it's weird. I don't know if Jason would agree with me on this, but it's like I've heard a lot of this audio, and it sounds like somebody doing an impression of Darth Vader that you hear everywhere. Has nothing to do with his
I could do
performance.
that too.
It's like I'm lowering my voice and I'm talking like this, as opposed to the pauses and the emphasis he puts on certain words.
Well, it's okay. It's important to note that this is all dynamic, right? Like
Yeah.
the way,
Yeah.
in the, what is it? I think in the Obi-Wan series, they used the respeecher technology based on James Earl Jones' voice, but there was a performance. Somebody was giving a performance of Darth Vader, and then it's being tweaked, and there's a lot of like very subtle, careful stuff to get, in the end, I would argue, a Darth Vader that sounds more like classic Darth Vader than the last few times James Earl Jones did it. Like in Rogue One, Darth Vader kind of sounds like an old man because James Earl Jones did it, but he was an old man. But it was a performance. This is not a performance. This is an LLM with an 11 Labs virtual voice. And so it sounds like Darth Vader, sure, but it's not a performed Darth Vader. It's a text to speech Darth Vader. Yeah, so you get what you pay for, basically.
It's kind of how we've culturally forgotten what Elvis Presley really sounded like. We've forgotten what Frank Sinatra really sounded like because our cultural memory has been supplanted by every single Elvis impersonator going, "Oh, thank you very much."
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm perfectly okay with this kind of use of AI if the actor or the actor's estate signed off on it, and apparently the family was pleased enough by whatever check they may or may not have received that they actually provided a quote for the press release, because I'm sure Epic anticipated this kind of a problem. However, this is a situation where I would much rather it be like when they replaced Jim Henson's voice for Kermit. It's like, okay, it's a different voice, but it's a different actor. It's a new actor. That's more acceptable than I'm going to have a synthetic voice that replicates the sounds that Jim Henson made, but I'm going to have another actor give the performance and the cadence and overlay that on top of that. That's where it gets a little bit murky. And that's where, as a consumer of entertainment, it gets a little bit...
you really have to wonder what James Earl Jones would have thought about this whole thing.
Oh, the family statement is along the lines of, oh, well, James Earl Jones wanted the character to survive and wanted this and was very pleased about this being a new generation. But again, fortunately, he had enough resources that he was able to provide legal cover and legal continuity for these choices to be made. So there's no doubt in my mind that there are people making these choices on his behalf that he specifically considered and designated for this sort of stuff. So it's hard. So we might not like it as an audience, but ethically, I don't think there's a big problem with it.
It's nice. It's actually nice to, take care
I mean, what are you going to do? Like not have Darth Vader anymore because the actor's not gone? I just wish there would be, let's hire a new actor who is definitely going to do a voice that's compatible with James Earl Jones, but we're not going to pretend that, hey,
well, they did that, didn't they? There are a lot of people in cartoons and elsewhere that have voiced Darth Vader.
Batmans keep getting cycling in and out all the time, and it's like a tiny little spin on it. But,
take a little break. Come back with more. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. We start a little late, but we're going to get through this, trust me, in time for Steve Gibson and Security Now. We'll probably be about an hour out for Steve Gibson and Security Now, just so you know if you're tuning in to watch that show on our live feed. We do these shows live so that you can watch on YouTube, Twitch, X.com, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Kick, and TikTok. Did I mention TikTok? Is TikTok up, by the way? Do we get that working?
Yes.
All right. So we are now on TikTok as well. So watch live if you wish. 11 a.m. normally Pacific on Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. But we like it if you subscribe to the podcast. That way you get a copy, audio or video, for your edification and entertainment after the fact every week automatically. Our show today brought to you by Bitwarden, the trusted leader in passwords, secrets, and passkey management. That's what I use it for anyway. With more than 10 million users, this number blew me away. I couldn't believe it. 180 countries, 50,000 business customers worldwide. Bitwarden continues to protect businesses and individuals worldwide. G2 consistently ranks Bitwarden number one in user satisfaction. Every year on World Password Day, Bitwarden does a survey of people about passwords, how they use it, and so forth. Their survey this year shows that even the youngs will benefit from a robust password manager. Gen Z may be the most digitally native generation, but it has been found guilty of the highest incidence of password reuse. According to the survey, 72% of Gen Zers reuse the same password across accounts. 72%! It's not like they don't know. 79% admit password reuse is risky. 59% recycle an existing password. And this is the worst. When companies disclose data breaches and they say we had to reset your password, 59% say, yeah, we just reuse the existing password. We don't care. This is why you need Bitwarden, kids. Bitwarden has announced the launch of Access Intelligence. This is a new capability that helps enterprises enable employees, including your Gen Z employees, to proactively defend against internal credential risks and external phishing threats. It uses two core functionalities to do this. Risk Insights reduces alert fatigue and allows IT teams to identify, prioritize, and remediate at-risk credentials. There's also an advanced phishing blocker. You'll get alerts, and it'll redirect your users from known phishing sites in real time. And it's always up to date. They use a continuously updated open source block list of malicious domains. So if you're using Bitwarden, the chances are if you try to use that password at a phishing site, you will be stopped. It's actually happened to me. I love it. What sets Bitwarden apart is it's easy. They prioritize simplicity. Setup will only take you a few minutes. In fact, it's very easy to move over. It supports importing from most password management solutions. And this is very important to me, and I would submit important to everyone, Bitwarden is open source. That means the source code can be inspected anywhere on GitHub by anyone, and it's regularly audited by third-party experts, and they publish the results of those audits. Bitwarden, you can be confident, meets the strictest security and compliance requirements. There's SOC 2 Type 2, GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, ISO 27001-2002. It is secure. And that's if you're going to trust a password manager with your vault. But if you're an individual user, you don't have to. But I do. You can host your own Bitwarden vault, but I like to have Bitwarden do it, and it's kind of reassuring to know that they really are experts in securing that. You and your business deserve an effective solution for enhanced online security. You employ any Gen Zers, you maybe want to get started today with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan. And I always like to say this, free forever across all devices as an individual user because it's open source. Free forever, that's unlimited passwords. It's passkeys. Trust me, if you're using passkeys, I love passkeys, but you've got to put it in Bitwarden, not on a hardware device, so that it's everywhere you need it to be. So when I log into Fastmail or GitHub or Google even, I use passkeys. It's more secure than passwords. And because it's in Bitwarden, I have it everywhere. Bitwarden.com/twit. Sign up today. It's what I use. Steve Gibson uses it. Bitwarden.com/twit. We thank him so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. New book. I haven't read it yet. I want to read it. Apparently, he was on Colbert last night. The author Patrick McGee, Apple in China, the capture of the world's greatest company. The premise of this. Oh, you got it. You've read it. Nice.
Well, no, it literally arrived today at the library. And
it's a library book.
It was my hold. Yeah. I've only read the forward.
This is the summary from Simon & Schuster. After struggling to build its products on 3 continents, Apple was lured by China's seemingly inexhaustible supply of cheap labor. Soon it was sending thousands of engineers across the Pacific, training millions of workers, spending hundreds of billions of dollars to create the world's most sophisticated supply chain. These capabilities enabled Apple to build the 21st century's most iconic products in staggering volume and for enormous profit, but without explicitly intending to, Apple built an advanced electronics industry within China, only to discover that its massive investments in technology upgrades had inadvertently given Beijing a power that could be weaponized. The author McGee says China could just stop the iPhone cold anytime it wanted.
Yeah, I've only read the foreword, but the foreword begins with like when Xi Jinping rose to power, and immediately Chinese state-sponsored television was like launching attacks against Apple about, you're not treating your Chinese customers as well as you're treating international customers, and you're just all this, that, and the other, and how like Apple was like shocked that but we spent all this money making this great relationship, and our policies are pretty much the same like everywhere. And it was like a moment where they realized that they maybe don't have the relationship with China that they thought they did. And that the author identifies that as like a turning point where that's the point at which instead of going 100% diplomacy, and putting executives living in China full time to keep an eye on like what the weather was over there. That's when they should have started to think about what if this relationship breaks down. They were putting in one of the figures that's being quoted a lot in the reviews is about how the CHIPS Act, like the Biden's CHIPS Act, was something like $52 billion total, whereas Apple was putting like $55 billion a year into Chinese manufacturing. And it wasn't just like investing in factors. It was like creating workflows, creating infrastructure, creating this, that, and the other. Basically, as I think that quote that you said didn't put it, a transfer of knowledge, a transfer of experience going into China. And if you're concerned about geopolitics in that kind of manufacturing, the argument to be made is that Apple seriously undermined the United States' ability to ever be able to build iPhones profitably inside the United States by putting all that money and all that expertise into building up a Chinese electronics industry.
It sounds like this was well researched, more than 200 interviews. Apple, according to 9 to 5 Mac, says the claims made in this book are false and there are many inaccuracies throughout. The company asserts the author didn't perform proper fact checking. So Apple doesn't like it.
And there's a pretty good good interview on the Daily Show as well with.
That's what it was. The Daily Show. Yeah.
It was kind of hilarious. Yeah. John was particularly animated in this. This is probably not one he could have done on his show on Apple TV.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely outlined, how you go down a path, and something I always call it the kitty cat principle, which is that your cat is so nice to you as long as you're much bigger than it is, and as soon as it's bigger than you, you're lunch, it would switch to lunch really fast, even your own cat. I think that the challenge that Apple had is when they got there wasn't a lot there. They splunked it. The problem is, I think anybody saying that this could be done in the United States isn't really looking at what people are willing to pay. I mean, we're talking about people not willing to pay for a headset for $3,500. That's probably about what the top of the line Apple phone would cost if we did it in the United States. And that's just labor. Like just the cost of labor is just entirely different. And it was much different back then. It's gotten the cost of labor has gone up in China pretty dramatically, partially because of Apple. But the automation has also changed. And so and again, I think that trying to compare that to the overall decline of machining and precision machining in the United States long before any of this stuff happened, I think that he probably jumps to a couple of conclusions I wouldn't follow. But it is the case that Apple trained a lot of people to do a lot of things, and it has built a lot. When you look at a company like DJI, who is exploding, there's a lot of technicians that are working on DJI that probably came out of those at some point or in those Apple factories getting trained to do precision work.
Well, I guess I will read it.
I got the Audible book. I bought it. I saw the interview with Jon Stewart and ordered literally while I was watching it going, I need to listen to this
Good.
book.
Well, next week.
By next week I will.
Club.
Yeah.
Book club. Tell us what you think. I mean, on the surface, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think there's anybody could deny that if somehow in this trade war, China decided it would be more in their interest to slow down production of the iPhone, that they could do it. He says, you could cut power to 4 hours a day. So
the counter argument is that we, especially in America, tend to build up China as this big, scary boogeyman.
Right.
And while China is huge and has a huge economy and has a lot of money, the fact is that it is a two-way relationship. The fact is China benefits greatly and China's economy benefits greatly from all the business. It would have
to be a crisis in our relationship.
It would have to be a severing of ties, basically, for this to happen, because it would be. And again, I know it's an authoritarian regime and they've got complete control and all of that, but like.
They're also in economic straits.
The weakness is always going to be the economy, because people will put up with a lot, but there is a limit to it. And so that's the thing, is like, yes, Apple would be completely boned if China was like, nope, no more exporting anything to outside of China. It's over. But China's economy would be pretty boned too.
Right.
And
it would be mutual. It's mutually assured destruction.
Yeah,
which is always a good way.
At which point we're
keep
really
people
just talking
honest.
about a war over Taiwan is the scenario here.
Right.
Well, there are a lot of components to this, and part of it is that having watched, if anybody who's been watching for the past 3 or 4 years has seen that China has decided that why are we direct helping our own people to put money into a company like Apple and making that almost the national luxury brand? Why don't we make Xiaomi the national luxury brand instead, and eventually wean ourselves of the influence of this kind of foreign money? And this is one of the reasons why I think you see sales in China declining.
Yeah.
There was another story about how there were some retailers were offering unprecedented discounts on iPhones. Above and beyond just like a regional or a holiday sale, because just sales are just down, and there doesn't seem to be a way to get them back up again. And part of that has to be because the Chinese Communist Party has all kinds of outlets in which to promote Chinese businesses and to at least disadvantage Apple businesses. I don't think they're at a point right now where they will do what they did in 2013, which is to basically, like, within it really was it's a nice opening of the book. Literally within 72 hours of taking power, he was like firing fusillades against Apple. I don't think we're back to that, but they don't have to really attack Apple directly so long as they give local companies, Chinese companies, advantages that are denied to Apple.
Well, Apple says that they're still selling pretty well in urban China. It's not all of China, but in urban China that they sell very well. Their business is not growing like it did a while ago. I think that I think that from a China standpoint, they keep vacillating between the nationalism of, be proud and buy Chinese products, and the other part of it, which is, look how awesome we are. You get access to the very best product in the world. It isn't denied to you, and they customize it for China, and isn't that great? And so there's a real kind of like back and forth that happens there. But that's the consumer part of the business, and I think nobody would argue that if Apple's sales in China went to zero, Apple would be in dire straits, right? They wouldn't be happy. They'd be very sad about it. But like, that's the consumer sales aspect, whereas there's the manufacturing aspect where they would be completely wrecked if that went. And China benefits from that because those are factories that are employing lots of people in the supply chain and, assembling Apple devices and all of that. And that is, if you lost that would be bad for China's economy. So it's complicated, but like, there's no doubt about the thesis of this book, which is that Tim Cook didn't have to go all in on China, but Tim Cook in the 2000s was a real believer in China as a market and China as a manufacturing center, and went all in. He went all in. There's no denying that. And now he is dealing with all the weakness that causes him and the lack of flexibility that it causes him.
Well, and I think that the hard part is that a lot of these things kind of generate their own weather system. Like all the hard drives are made in Thailand or whatever. There was a time, at least, when all the hard drives made, and when we had a flood, we couldn't buy hard drives.
That's right.
because because the problem is that you have these huge, massive supply chains that are. It's like you have to have all these other pieces that are there to supply it. All the little pieces, all the little things that are made. It's all made by a bunch of little companies. It's not just that there's one big company that's building all these things. There's all these suppliers that are providing all of these things that are all kind of flowing into that system. And so as you build that up, it gets to a point where it's pretty hard to do anywhere else, And so now Apple is doing it, and it's very expensive. And I think that China's sensitive to that. I think the problem is that all the saber rattling that's happening between the United States and China gives Apple a little bit of cover. Like, hey, we got to be able to do something else, and we got to be able to, we've got tariffs and everything else. So building up into India makes sense. But I think what they're doing in India is exactly the same thing as what they did in China. In Vietnam, they're training lots of people. It's not just that India is, and this is why India has such large tariffs they want you to build things there because they want skills. Like they want the skills that are part of this puzzle. They want to build those skills up. Whether in Vietnam wants the same thing. Everybody. So Apple going in and hiring tens of thousands of people to do these things, is going to build up an industry again in other countries. They need time, and the question is whether they'll have enough time to make the turn before there's a conflict over Taiwan. I think that really the big thing is we can talk about all the other things that Apple might be caught up in, but the war in Taiwan is the thing that would probably be the the thing that will turn the crank the hardest between the two if something happens there.
Apple, China's already cut off some of their minerals, right? Rare earths for magnets and lithium and stuff. Some of which are not easily attained elsewhere. Lithium is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we're already in a trade war with them.
Yeah, and
admittedly, we're very dependent on each other. But it could go south at any point. I mean, that's just one more threat to Apple. There are many, right?
And it's not just the trade war aspect of it. Another piece of news this week is Xiaomi shipped their first version of Honor, their first laptop that runs Honor OS, which is 100% internally made, no external code. It's not based on Linux. It's not based on anything. It's completely homegrown, and they're putting it on their phones, their watches, their tablets, their laptops, servers, everything. And it just shows you how comprehensive this idea of we want everything to be made inside China. It's not just nationalistic. It means that there are a couple of Congress people this week basically said that we have to make sure that that this Honor OS doesn't like gain a toehold in world technology, because it's probably a spying apparatus for the Chinese government. It's like it almost definitely is a spying apparatus, at least for their own people. And that's the level of control that the party wants to have over the technology that transacts inside this country. So there's a lot of reasons why. I'm sure that China does not want to lose Apple's business, certainly not as a manufacturing business. But if they can apply like a 5-year or 10-year plan that basically says that we can basically handle all the rest of the world's manufacturing without Apple, the benefits, the multidimensional benefits of producing all of our own stuff for our own consumers and our own people internally, that might very much outweigh that. So
also there's some of these phones from Huawei and Xiaomi are pretty darn amazing. You can't buy them in the U.S. This trifold Mate, people are raving over it. It is like $3,000, but you can't get it in the U.S.
It's not a stunt. People who have their hands on it saying, "I don't know how long it's going to work," but
no, the raves.
It's an amazing device.
One tech blog said the best phone you should not buy. Because it's not only so expensive, you can't buy it in the U.S. But this is the thing. I mean, I don't think that. Well, it's an interesting world we live in. Let's put it that way.
Much in motion is the future.
Yeah. All right, let's take another little break. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. The usual assembled. It's great to have Jason Snell from sixcolors.com, Andy Anako, and of course, Alex Lindsay from officehours.global. And we're so glad that we have you too. Thank you for watching. F1, I'm a big F1 fan. Monaco is this coming week. Apple has a big movie coming out next month with Brad Pitt. So, of course, they're getting in on the F1 hype. You can now travel the Monaco circuit on the Apple Maps in beautiful cartoon fashion. I've stayed there. I've stayed on the hairpin, and I've walked the Monaco circuit, and it's quite amazing. In fact, I was there a couple of years ago when they were getting ready for the race, and it was really fun to watch it be transformed. I love watching the race.
Yeah, they did it with Vegas. They did the same thing with the Vegas race where they added it.
Right.
And I've heard from people about, like, they do this with Super Bowl cities. They use it as an opportunity for that too. And there's temporary landmarks that they mark, and then those go away when the grandstands come down, and the permanent landmarks that they mark. And this is that enhanced 3D city view and all of that. I got a briefing about this, which I find hilarious because I'm like, are they saying Monaco is the word they're saying? And then I'm like, oh yeah, it is. But if you zoom in close, there are all these like billboards and everything, and they're all billboards for the F1 movie that's coming.
Oh my God, you're kidding!
Next June from Apple.
Oh my God!
In theaters everywhere, starring Brad Pitt. Because that's what this is. This is part of the month-long, more than a month-long Rolling Thunder promo for the F1 movie that's coming out next month.
Are you going to get invited to a special screening?
I doubt it. I mean, that would be a first. I would love, although I'll say this, I would love to go to a movie screening at the Steve Jobs Theater, because that would
wouldn't
be
that be cool?
state of the art. That sound system is so spectacular. Those projectors are amazing. I would love to do that, but I bet that's going to be an Apple employees only kind of thing.
You got to be Johnny Ive level or better to get in there.
Yeah, you got to be this tall to ride the ride. Whatever.
I loved it when I worked in San Francisco in radio. I'd get invited to. There's a screening room in San Francisco, small. It's about 10 people get in there. Very comfortable. And you'd get advanced screenings of movies. I always go to as many of those as I could.
I was a little surprised to find that after the new Apple after the Spaceship Campus was open, that there weren't more public events at the Steve Jobs Theater. Because it's situated kind of like how the theater at ILM is situated, where it's off the main entrance, so that you don't have to let people go through like the actual building in order to get there. And Alex will know that they do have like Academy screenings and other like special events, because it is the most kick butt theater I've ever been in my entire freaking life.
It's good.
But I kind of imagine that one of the reasons why the Steve Jobs Theater was placed where it was so that if they had a production or a movie or an event that they felt was in line with their interests or their goals, that they could hold it. They can make that theater available without, again, allowing people to run roughshod over the entire spaceship.
I think it's definitely designed to have a lot of people there and to let people in without, the way that you get to it from the front entrance, the way all that stuff is a pretty straight shot without having any kind of, you're not connected to anything else. So it stands alone by itself. I think the challenge is that I think it might have been building up towards that. They were doing more events there right before COVID. When COVID hit, they got used to not having anybody around,
and they kind of liked it.
They probably were just kind of like,
I'm hip.
Because I mean, it's amazing. When you walk up to it, the very expensive Meyer speakers that are in the walkway sound amazing. On the way there, and it's it's a great space to do that in. But I do, I think that, and I think it's probably one of the best theaters there. I mean, I think the Dolby Theater, the internal Dolby Theater that is at Dolby, is probably the nicest one in the Bay Area as far as sound and
there's Lucas's, right, at the ranch. That's a pretty nice theater.
Stag. Yeah, I saw what did I see there? Men in Black. I saw Men in Black at the Stag. It was amazing.
Good sound.
They had to add sound back into the Stag because they were creating because they use it for the mixes. They sit in there and they listen to it. They say, "Oh, a little bit of this." They were adding things that were too subtle for an average theater, so they had to have a way to add noise back in to like dumb it down so that you understood that this is not what people are going to hear. Like they're not going to hear any of what you just added because the system can't.
It is amazing to see something with really good sound in that theater. It's quite a thing to see.
The closest you can get in public, I think, right now is from the fidelity is probably the Dolby theaters. As far as the number of speakers and stuff like that in public, and then I would say IMAX. Those are the two big.
There's a certain irony in the fact that all of those fancy speakers, like the Revel speakers in the sound booth there at Lucas Sound, now are owned by Samsung, which has purchased every damn speaker brand, including Bowers and Wilkins, that there is. They're all under the Samsung label now. So Apple should have done a little bit of that. They could have swooped in and bought Denon. I don't know if Myers is. Myers might be too small, but Revel is. Bowers and Wilkins is. Because they bought Denon Marantz.
Right.
This just happened.
Yep.
Let's see. What else is going on in the Apple world today? I need to fill some time so we don't have all the commercials happening at the... Oh, I wonder if Tim Cook's ears were burning. When the president was in Saudi Arabia, making money, accepting planes, all of that. Jensen Huang made the trip. He joined him from Nvidia. And the president said, "I see my friend is here, Jensen. Tim Cook isn't here, but you are. Tim Cook isn't here." Is this like a mob boss saying?
I mean, if you
would be
want to see why.
He wants another $1 million, clearly.
If you're asking like why did all those people pay $1 million and willing to sit behind him during the thing, is because of the constant threats, and so the constant like all of this can go away tomorrow at a whim.
Tim, Trump says, "I had a little problem with Tim Cook." yesterday. I don't want you building in India, he says. Little problem with Tim. God, this must be so humiliating.
Yep.
I said to him, my friend, I treated you very good. You're coming here. This is such a mob boss. I said to him, my friend, I treated you very good.
Not once invite me over for a cup of coffee.
And Tim didn't look at him and go, I think it's very well.
Very good. You're coming here with $500 billion. Now I hear you're building all over India. I don't want you building in India. This is the president of the freaking United States threatening, basically.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I don't want you building in India. I said to Tim, I'm more quotes. I'm not making this up. Tim, look, we treated you really good. This is from CNBC, which is, by the way, not the most left-leaning of organizations. I said to Tim, Tim, look, we treated you really good. We put up with all the plants that you built in China for years. We put up with that. Now you got to build us. We're not interested in you building in India. India can take care of themselves. We want you to build here. I said to Tim,
Tim's name is never far from his lips. It's weird.
Something's not far from his lips.
I think
Jesus
that
Christ.
Not say that. Anyway, so I think that the challenge is, I think Tim's played it about as best as well as you can, but it's riding a buck and bronco.
You can't win. It's riding a bronco. You can't win.
Eventually you're going to come off, and I think that's the challenge. And again, I think that oftentimes in all of these monopoly conversations and everything else, you just realize how quickly all of this can go one way or the other, especially in the current environment, where whatever you thought someone had a controlling interest, things can evaporate very quickly. And I think that he's obviously threatening that. I'm sure that Tim Apple will promise more factories, or there'll be a new announcement at WWDC about another factory in Austin or something that they're going to bring to the United States, and then Trump will forget about it for another 6 months and then complain about it again.
I don't know if you were watching the Google event, but weirdly, they had U2, a U2 song behind one of their promotional videos. God, I hope Tim doesn't find out. Bono says Apple is, quote, dying to make Vision Pro affordable. Nope. Wait a minute. It's time for the Vision Pro segment.
What do you see? What do you know? It's time to talk the Vision Pro.
So Friday, Bono's Stories of Surrender arrives on Apple TV and on your Vision Pro. Are you all excited to watch that?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see it.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. It's not about you two. It's about it's kind of a Bono thing. It's going to be the first full-length immersive video, by the way. So bring snacks.
That's the one hard thing that is.
Wear your cervical collar so you can
hard to eat
bear the weight of the thing for the entire runtime.
It's only a pound.
Eating the snacks looks a lot like pinching. And so every time you do something with the snacks, I found that it's like, oh, never mind. I can't. That's if you want to have popcorn, you got to go back to a regular screen.
So this is what Bono says. Apple have this new sonic innovation commitment to fidelity of sound. Sounds are becoming really important in movies and people's home cinemas. The Vision Pro, it's a commitment. You're getting into a world, and there are extraordinary things I've seen. I've seen extraordinary things through the Vision Pro. We had this idea of, the camera can be on stage and walking around you. We couldn't light it as easily as we thought, but we successfully got the viewer on stage. I took out my drawings from the stage show for the filming, and they're not in the 2D Apple TV Plus version of Stories of Surrender, but they are in Vision Pro. These childlike drawings. No one would like to be able to draw as badly as me, but it's like a signature, a fingerprint. Anyway, that's Bono talking to Deadline.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
That's what it sounded
I'll let
like.
you have that one.
A little Blade Runner going on there.
Well, time to die.
When asked on The Price is Right.
Sorry, I'm remembering this video.
Dun, 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 dun.
Should I probably can't show the video actually. Yeah. When they had a Vision Pro on The Price is Right. And as you know, with that game show. You were supposed to guess the price, and whoever's closest wins, right?
It was a showcase. It was a part of the show where like they're at their little kiosks, and they have to, whoever comes closest to guessing the price of the thing gets to come up on stage and actually
so
play a game.
It's your starting
without going over. And so the first guy says $750.
Yeah.
Well, maybe can I show? I'll just show it. What the hell?
I mean, without going over. So after that, the first two bids, the third guy is like, well, it's more expensive than that. So that's 1,001. And then the last lady is like, if you are convinced that it's more than that, you just bid 1,002,
Exactly.
and
Obviously,
you've got all
one.
prices above it, an infinite number of prices above it.
We obviously all of us are we spent our childhood watching this when we were sick. Yeah,
we know how to play. We know the strategies.
We're talking about Dan on Jeopardy last week, and I'm not confident that I do great on Jeopardy, but everybody's like, oh my god, I would have got the $100 bonus for that one. If you get the price, you get a $100 bonus. Anyway,
$100 bonus. You would have gotten on that one. Everybody knows it's 3,500. The audience gasped.
You would have lost, Leo.
You would have
$334.99.
You would have
went over. I got to go under.
You would have claimed yourself out of a free Vision Pro there.
I don't think she got the Vision Pro. I think it went back into the ceiling for next time. It's gonna.
Well, otherwise they're gonna pay the tax on it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Has anybody tried the new sound therapy on Apple Music? The collection from UMG leverages cognitive science and their roster of global superstars. Subtle auditory beats to well-known curated tracks. Oh, that's interesting. So it's not special tracks; it's regular tracks with beats behind them.
Yeah, it's like a meditation DJ mix of like actual.
Yeah, but I'm not going to meditate to Katy Perry, Casey Musgraves. I mean, come on, man. Anyway, there's focus, there's relax, and there's sleep. I'll have to try it. We play sleep sounds when we're sleeping because we have a noisy street near us.
I mean, I love the idea of it. I love that Apple is like continuing to add features and have new ideas for it, as opposed to just simply coming up with new ways to like insert a playlist into the front screen that I need to move past to get to the stuff I actually wanted to listen to.
Tech Radar's Hamish Hector says, I tried Apple's new sound therapy playlists and they've solved my sleep troubles. So I'll take that for whatever. It's good link bait. I'm no sound psychologist, but I am an Apple Music subscriber.
It's a good thing. I think a lot of us are in the like. I listen to like when I'm preparing like to do this show. I've discovered that my show prep is exactly 1 Turandot long. So if I put on like a recording of Turandot, it's like a 2.5
how long
hour,
is Turandot?
Like 2.5 hours, like something like that. And I know that if we get to Nessun Dorma and I'm not like just like sort of saying, well, what have I missed? I'm probably behind. And by the time that Leo makes her sacrifice, I really need to be uploading the spreadsheet.
My preparation's about Hang On Sloopy long. It's not. We're spending a lot of time.
I just take a greatest hits of Alvin and the Chipmunks and put it on repeat. And so by the time I got here, all I could do is see blood and want to kill everyone, and that puts me in the right frame of mind. So to each their own.
All I was getting is pretty music, and the lyrics don't like, because I don't understand the language, I don't like, it doesn't really distract me. So I like the idea of here's something that if you have a work session that's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 hours long, it will be enough to basically cover up whatever the background noise of your life is that's going to distract you, while not being so pretty and so engaging that it's going to distract you from the thing you needed like 2.5 hours to 3 hours worth of piece for. So it's interesting. I gave it like the shortest of listens just to see like what it was about. But I like the idea that Apple is putting in interesting features for Apple Music to distinguish itself from from Spotify beyond, high resolution music, which we're still supposed to be getting on Spotify any year now.
Are you saying that Puccini's story of the Chinese Princess Turandot and ancient China is not sufficient to put you out?
I will say that as if I'm focusing on it once again, I'm thinking, oh my God, Khalaf is such a stupid, stupid tenor to fall in love with this woman who clearly, Khalaf, the first thing you saw was one of her suitors being beheaded and the head being put on a pike to join all the other people who have dared to ask her to marry them. What the hell do you see? And
somebody's been listening to Alvin and the Chipmunks, I guess.
If you listen to it at normal speed, I think that
makes you want to murder.
Nuances.
You're going to have something new to listen to come July 18th. Snoopy presents a summer musical, a new original Peanuts special featuring music by one of my favorite pianists, Ben Folds and Jeff Morrow. I mean, look, Vince Guaraldi's long gone, but at least you can have Ben Folds in your thing. That's pretty cool.
First musical in how many years? I think they were saying.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Wow.
They've been doing some cool stuff. First Peanuts musical in 35 years, according to Apple TV.
Wow.
Excuse me, I have very important news, breaking news that I need to share here. Leo, we need to close the parentheses.
What do you know?
We're done talking the Vision Pro.
And
it was the shortest Vision Pro segment ever. I added some Bono quotes.
That was the second shortest, Leo. Second shortest.
That's why the show wouldn't compile. Unmatched parenthesis. Good catch.
You'd think being a lisper, I would have known. It is the 75th anniversary of Snoopy, Charlie Brown, and the Peanuts Gang. And Apple, of course, owns it.
Yeah.
And so there have been other specials, but this one's fully musical. Directed by Eric Weiss. It's written by Craig Schultz, Brian Schultz. Those are interesting names. I think maybe related somehow.
Yep.
And Cornelius Uliano.
The world needs more Peanuts and Muppets, I think.
I agree.
Pre-Disney Muppets, but okay.
Frog and Toad is coming. Wonderful story. I used to read my kids. Yo Gabba Gabba Land. Okay. And a whole lot more of kids' entertainment, but there's nothing like Peanuts for all the family of all ages.
One morning, the Peanuts gang learns that their beloved camp is shutting down because fewer campers are joining each summer. The news especially saddens Charlie Brown, who feels hopeless about losing a place that's meant so much to him and his friends.
Let's put on a show.
They start a bikini cart wash, right? That's what happens next, right?
Okay, this is definitely cinematic universe canon, because in comic strip canon, Charlie Brown hates going to camp every single year. He feels like he's being drafted. Except for the one time he went with a sack over his head and became elected camp president.
But we know, based on the Hella Mudda, Hella Fada corollary, that by the end of your time at camp, you actually love it and want to stay.
Yes.
That probably happens like that for Charlie Brown every year. He gets drafted, he doesn't want to be there, and then by the end, he doesn't want to go.
Any of you own an Aston Martin?
No.
Not right now.
Not
now. Not at the moment.
Soon, it's CarPlay Ultra. They found one manufacturer who was willing to let Apple take over the entire front of the car, and there it is. You have to have an Aston Martin.
Although they said that Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis are now on board as partners as well to add to the list. I think this is, I don't know if you saw the Top Gear video, which was excellent and people should watch it, but it's very clearly like a marketing push for other car makers from Apple, where they're talking of the Aston Martin designers like it was so great working with Apple and all that. And you can see it's like, yes, it is great to work with Apple. You too could work with Apple. But that all said, it seems reasonable. It seems like we got an answer to a lot of the questions that we had 3 years ago of like, how do you implement this if you're not running at a low level? And the answer is something that I definitely, talked about with some car industry people 3 years ago, which is there's themes. So Apple's working with the car makers to build a bunch of theme files. And then when you connect the phone the first time, it downloads the theme files so that there can be parts of the interface that are generated from the car and parts from the iPhone, but they all share the same theme and they all, look of a kind, and they can project or cut out one into the other. And all that's going on. So, I would say Aston Martin obviously is a, very niche case, but there are probably going to be some bigger car manufacturers who will be happy to let Apple give them a little bit of a glow up in terms of
is that the
availability.
Trade? Yeah, I mean, they take over the instrument. Here's the instrument cluster.
But it's a co-brand. Like when they plug it in, it's a collab. It's like Aston Martin X Apple, right? Like
Oh,
it's
okay.
like we
So
work
Aston
on this
gets-
together.
Okay.
And I'm sure that's because Apple went to all the car makers and they're like, nuh-uh. And so instead it's this kind of like, we will collaborate with you and you get to work with Apple's designers and we'll work with your designers and we'll make this beautiful thing. And it's a very interesting way to get something. And I suspect that there are some car makers who like putting screens in their cars because it makes them cool, but doesn't like maintaining software stack and writing user interface.
Right.
And I think that those companies are going to love the idea that they get to work with Apple and have
So
it
you
be
get
awesome.
free updates,
And then there are other companies who feel like, no. As a car company, we take pride in our user experience software engineering, which I would argue is delusional, but there are companies like GM who think that, and they'll say, no, thank you. We're not even interested in CarPlay at all.
Honestly,
and that's fair
if
too.
you want to update, I think it's better to update the phone than update the car. I've had numbers of cars that do updates where the dealer says you got to bring it in because we're not going to let you do the update yourself.
Ironically,
if
you've got an Aston Martin, you need to bring it in to get the software update to do this.
Oh, yeah, of course. But they don't want to break anything.
But the fact, I think the three Korean brands that got announced, I think that's a great example where they have really some of those the Hyundai Ioniqs and all that. The screens look awesome, but if you've ever been in one, the UI it's not very good, right? It's just not very good. So letting iPhone users just kind of like get a super upgrade of their car because they're an iPhone user, that's good for everybody. So I think that some automakers will jump at the chance to work with Apple on this.
The press release does say a design unique to each automaker.
Yeah, that's key. That's the key, right? Is that a lot of people assumed 3 years ago that Apple just was going to walk in and like steal everybody's interfaces away, and I think Apple discovered there's no way they're going to be allowed to do that. So instead, like the Aston Martin, it's got like a little Aston Martin logo on it and all of that, and then a bunch of themes, some of which are very traditional and some of which are very digital forward, and that's interesting. And like, but Aston Martin feels good about it, and I think that's the message to all these other car makers: is this is Apple. You get to work with Apple on a thing that makes your product better, not that Apple wants to come in and steal your product from you.
And US and Canada right now, it'll expand globally in the next year. You have to have an iPhone 12 or later running iOS 18.5 or later, which is kind of surprising to me. Like it needs an iPhone still to do this.
Well, that's where all the computing goes.
I guess so.
I think that Apple really wanted someone like Aston Martin to kind of show the high end version of like, hey, we're doing this too, not just with some of the Korean more
even Aston
Korean
Martin
bands. Even
will let us do it.
But
James
I think
Bond's
also,
car.
I think a lot of people, there's a lot of iPhone users out there that when it's not available anywhere or only available in one car, that's not going to make a big deal. That they've got a bunch of other choices. But if it starts getting available in, let's say, 10% or 15 or 20% of the cars, there's a certain group of iPhone users that would definitely look at that first. Like I would prefer, because most of the interfaces for these cars is junk, as Jason said. I mean, they're just horrible.
It's true.
I rent a lot of cars, so I see a lot of interfaces. None of them look as good as the Apple interface. And usually all I want to do is just get rid of it and replace it with my iPhone anyway. And so, and when I can't do that, I usually just suction cup something to the front of their little screen and put my iPad up and call it a day. And so the thing is that I think that there's enough iPhone users out there that for these companies, you always have to remember these companies are fighting over 1 or 2% of the market. If it moves, I think I've told the story before, but Dodge, when they made their big redesign, there was a solid 40 to 50% of the people who said they would never touch that design, with the ones with the big open lights or whatever. And someone came back to the CEO and said, well, I guess we're not going to make it because only 15% said they had to have it. And he said, our market is 7%. We'll absolutely do it. And so the thing is that when these car companies are trying to do something new, if they decide their competitive advantage is not going to be their interface, their competitive advantage is cost, their competitive advantage is some other part of the design, why bother? Like, why bother having that? Let Apple do that. They're really good at it.
And there's a comfort factor too, where like, Hyundai is very comfortable in making a dashboard full of a big, wide, beautiful screen, right? Because that's a hardware installation and they're very comfortable with it. And they know they need to do a base level of software in order to drive those screens and in order to do basic functionality. But like, do they have an enormous pride in investing anything beyond that? Probably not. But for a company like that, getting Apple as a partner is actually even bigger because since they made the investment in all those screens now all get an upgrade by using the CarPlay interface on top of their interface. So like it makes sense to me. Like it's not going to make sense for every car maker, but you're absolutely right, Alex. I think over the long haul, you're going to end up with three choices. You're going to get a car that can't do CarPlay, a car that will do standard CarPlay, and a car that will do CarPlay Ultra. And then you'll decide, and iPhone users will be inclined to choose one of the other two, right? And a CarPlay Ultra car will be more appealing to an iPhone user because of it.
And if that moves the needle 1%,
yeah,
that's a huge, that's billions and billions of dollars, that are there. And to have Apple do the marketing for you, because Apple's going to, especially for these first ones, Apple's going to promote the heck out of them. They're going to be in ads. They're going to be in all kinds of other things. The amount of what they're going to receive for being part of that, I think, is going to be pretty big. I know that for me, in a couple of years, I'll probably be in the market for a car. I'm going to stretch my car out. I'm at 130,000 miles. I can go a little while longer. And when I do that, right now, the Slate is the thing I'm probably most likely to buy. But if I don't buy that, it's going to be some kind of electric car that has the Apple interface to it, because I'm not going to, why bother when other things are equal? Because I don't really care about anything else in the car other than it moves and that the interface works. So
yeah, and definitely it's one of those things where I bless them. Car makers, some of them really do take pride in their, that they're building beautiful software with beautiful interfaces. But boy, I've driven a lot of recent model cars as rental cars in the last couple of years, and I mean, it's rough. It's rough. And CarPlay is not perfect, but if I'm them and I built these beautiful screens that have my mediocre software on it, I'm like, yeah, I'll work with Apple. Sure. Where do I sign up?
I mean, I'm back to renting a car every 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm often left with, it's just like, this is like, I got to figure something out. And these guys,
rental cars though are not
exactly. They're
the worst of the worst.
Well, they're not Aston Martins, but I mean, I got a Hyundai with 50 miles on it, and it's a brand new 2023, 2024 Hyundai, and it's got their whole like screen interface up, and it's beautiful screens, and the interface is,
not so hot.
Functional.
Clunky.
It's functional.
They should talk to former Enterprise Design Lab product lead at Apple, Richard Das. Richard has just the wildest story on his blog about vibe coding a ChatGPT app for the Apple Watch. Thank you, Andy, for bringing this along. Oops, he says, I accidentally vibe coded a ChatGPT client for my Apple Watch. It was this easy. He put, before going to bed, I just typed this into Claude so I could revisit it in the morning. How feasible is it to make an Apple Watch app that allows the user to ask a question to ChatGPT using the OpenAI API? I want to start with just a single conversation so that every time the watch is used, it's just depending on the same thread. But optionally, maybe down the line, incorporate a way for the user to save a list of conversations and choose between them. For now, a single thread would be sufficient. He didn't expect that Claude would come back with code. Claude didn't just answer my question, responded with what looked suspiciously like working code. I would be a fool if I didn't at least try to compile it. So he generated a new Xcode project, opened the OpenAI dashboard, generated an API key, plugged it in, then hit build and run. And to my surprise, I was staring at a working ChatGPT client running on my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a good story because we've seen a lot of stories from like people who are not necessarily like experienced coders. Is like, oh wow, I vibe coded this incredible like stopwatch apps. He actually is ex-Apple. He used to work. He used to be, I think, a project.
He's an AI guy. A UI guy rather. Yes.
Apple's Enterprise Design Lab, which is where like he used to coach companies on how to build internal apps, so he's very, very familiar with like the entire process. He did say it's a worth a read because it does explain that, well, it's not as though you magically get this completely working app. He understands the entire stack of what you need to do when you're writing an app, not just, oh look, I got something that compiles and functions, but I need to have a philosophy, I need to have a flow to it, I need to have a structure to it, and it's a good field guide to what the AI was able to help him with, and what he still had to have full control of. But yeah, it's still it never gets old. The idea of I didn't intend to have a working Apple Watch app, but
I just wanted to go to bed.
but it turned exactly. I knew if I clicked 7 buttons, I could find out if this thing actually worked on my watch or not. So I did.
It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing story. I guess I have to end. I don't want to end with this, but I have to end with the sad news that just broke during the show that George Wendt has passed. Norm, of course, from Cheers. Very sad to say. Dead at the age of 76. And of course, as I read these obituaries, as I get older and closer to that age, I start to think, yeah, oh boy.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, and I'm wearing milk bone underwear.
A classic. All right, one more break, and then if you would prepare your picks of the week. You're watching MacBreak Weekly, and if you're a member of the club, you don't have to listen to this. Join the club because you're already a member and you're probably getting an ad-free version of the show. So we just cut that all out. But if you're not a member, can I please beg of you? It's looking more and more like we are going to raise the price. It's been 4 years. It's getting more expensive to run the operation, et cetera, et cetera. Ad revenue's going down. So I think a slight price increase is in the cards, but I want to promise you this. If you are a member, you'll be grandfathered in forever at the old price. So now is a good time to join. Don't say I didn't warn you. twit.tv/clubtwit, $7 a month, $84 a year, ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to the Club Twit Discord, which just by itself is a great place to hang out with people, like-minded people like you. But we do a lot of stuff in the club. For instance, all of the keynotes now, including the WWDC keynote, will be club only. There's a Twit Plus feed where you can listen to those after the fact, or you can watch live in the Club Twit Discord. There are special events. We had a great Stacy's Book Club, and now we're voting on the next book in the book club. I'm going to be hanging out with Dick DiBartolo later this week, May 23rd, just a few days away. We're going to celebrate the GizWiz's 2000th episode, and I'm going to drag out the old jingles. That'll be a lot of fun. Again, club members only. The AI user group is the first day, Friday of every month. That's June 6th. That was really fun last week. Anthony showed us how he makes some really cool little interstitial videos for the shows. Our keynote, WWDC keynote, is June 9th. There's a lot of photo time with Chris Marquardt, June 13th. I hung out with Micah in his crafting corner last week, and it was so much fun. I'm looking forward to the next one next month. Just a lot of reasons to join the club, but the big reason is it's keeping us on the air. 25% of our income now comes from club members. We really appreciate it, and we would like you all to be members. twit.tv/clubtwit. Someday, my dream, to have a network that's just completely supported by listeners. Wouldn't that be cool? Grandfathered in is becoming an unfavored term during it to have a racist origin. Oh, dear. Okay, well, give me another term and I'll use that instead. I didn't realize
legacy users? Or
legacy? I don't know.
Keeping the price. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, you get what I'm saying, and I apologize if it's offensive. twit.tv/clubtwit. You see, I learn stuff from the club all the time. They're very smart. Time for our picks of the week. Jason Snell, why don't you kick things off?
Sure. I can't believe I haven't done this one before, but I consult mbwpicks.com before every show and make sure that it has been a little while since I promote anything. That's not my pick. mbwpicks.com is free. Everybody can go there and find all our picks.
Thanks to the guy who does it. I've never met him. It's just amazing.
It's awesome. So I don't think I picked this, but I'm going to pick it now. It's called Pushover. There are apps for various platforms, the Mac and the iPhone, but I only use it on the iPhone. And what Pushover does is it uses the push notification system that's on all Apple devices to push to your phone, in my case, whatever you want. It works with webhooks. There's an email gateway. It's super easy to use. All you do is pay. It's $5 per platform. So I paid for this service. I paid $5 for the iPhone app, and I can send, it's not unlimited, but it's like 1,000 pushes a month, I think, to this thing, and
what do you push? What do you?
Okay,
I mean, what doesn't have a notification that you?
Well, here's a great example. So, for example, the guy who edits Upgrade, my podcast with Mike Hurley, a guy named Jim Metzendorf, he puts. Hi, Jim. He puts our files in a Dropbox folder and then says, "Here they are. They're ready to be posted." And then I post them because Mike Hurley's in London. He's going home to his wife and his baby. Like it's my job to post them. Well, I have an automation on my Mac that's actually using Hazel that basically sees that those files appear in our shared folder and fires off a webhook URL to push over. So wherever I am, if I'm walking the dog, wherever I am, my phone buzzes and says the Upgrade files are ready. Go post the show.
I bet our producers can use that. That's great.
When I have people email me people upload their files to Dropbox for podcasts that I host, and Dropbox generates a receipt that basically says, "Oh, this person used this Dropbox link to send you a file." I have Gmail auto forward those to the pushover email address, so I get a note saying, "Oh, that person uploaded that file," so I know when their files are all there, and then I can move them along in the process. And more recently, I wrote a little script that runs on my server that when my solar stuff on my roof is the battery is full and now it's just exporting power to the grid, it sends me a little push notification on my phone that said, "We're exporting power to the grid now," which for me is a really great notification, so I can do some laundry, run the dryer, plug in a car, anything that uses power, because in the middle of the day in the summer, exporting it to the grid earns me nothing. So I'd be better off using that power for literally everything else. Pre-chill the house, with the air conditioning, run the dishwasher, literally anything. So, but what I love about it is those are three totally random examples. It's just one of those things where if you're not an app developer, you don't have the ability to send yourself a push notification. Pushover fills that hole. It does it well. It's cheap. It's easy. You can do it with just email. A webhook is literally just you need software to hit a URL, and then that's it. And then it automatically sends you the push notification. So it couldn't be easier. It's really not very technical. And there are probably cases where if you know that it exists, now you'll have that moment where you'll think to yourself, "Boy, I wish this was a push notification." Oh, I can make it a push notification. Even if it's just forwarding an email that meets a few criteria, that's all you need. It's pretty great. So pushover. I love it.
Thank you, Jason Snell. My little pick of the week actually came from earlier today. Google announced that Notebook LM, which is a very cool tool we've talked about before, it takes information and turns it into a podcast that you can listen to, is now available for iOS as well as Android. So you can install the app, you can give it content, add sources from anywhere, and then it will start talking to you. Let's see. I gave it at one point all of the Security Now podcast transcripts. I wonder if it could generate a Security Now show. It's doing it right now without me or Steve. Anyway, Notebook LM. It's a very cool tool. We're going to interview the people behind it on Intelligent Machines soon. We've interviewed them in the past. But if you want to try it on iOS, now you can. Have a little, if you don't have enough podcasts, make some of your own. Andy and Atco, pick of the week.
My pick of the week is one of my favorite AI tools, Notebook LM. I've been using it for a long time. And
okay, you talk about it now. That's good.
I'm just
sorry. I didn't realize that.
That's okay. I'm just going to endorse your pick. And because there really is not much I need to add to it, that it's already really, really wonderful. It's the sort of thing where once you start using it and once you start
sorry.
No, it's fine. Once you start using it and saying, okay, well, every time that I get a new piece of information about this thing I'm studying or this thing I'm working on or this thing I want to understand more, I'm going to add it to this notebook, and you have multiple notebooks. The idea of having it on your phone makes this idea even more powerful because I'm always reading Reddit, I'm always reading Google News, I'm always reading FeedBurner, and it's like, oh, wow, that's a great article or a great piece of news on this topic that I'm tracking. Like here's a piece of legislature that's going through about controlling social media that's going through that's moving through Congress. now I can actually just simply, whatever I'm reading, just forward it to that particular notebook, and it adds to the corpus of knowledge that I can access through Notebook LM, so that if like a month and a half later, I can ask questions like, wasn't there some sort of a change that was made to that law that's not going to go anywhere because it has no co-sponsors? Like, which law is most likely to be moving forward at this time? And because I've been feeding it nothing but news and updates and PDFs of draft legislation for months and months and months, it can now answer questions based on the greatest knowledge. And because it's mobile, you can basically say, just talk to me for 20 minutes about this subject, and you can interrupt and ask questions about it. You can even do things like if you're trying to actually learn something, say, can you give me like a quiz on this part of history, like the Victorian era, but like art and how sexism affected like the advancement of art. Just give me like a 10-question quiz about that sort of stuff. And
that's cool.
It'll give you a quiz. And
that's
you can actually,
really
while
great.
you're on your bus, like be going over the stuff that you did. Anyway, amazing tool with or without the mobile app. The fact that you have the mobile app means that whatever you happen to be reading while you're waiting at the gate for your plane to board is now things you can be adding to your notebooks and interacting with. So really, really, really great stuff. Love it.
If you you can use it for free, but I think you can also, if you have I have a Google AI subscription, so $20 a month. I suspect that gives you just more chances to use it. Let me just play my Security Now podcast that I generated. I don't know. We'll see what it sounds like with the Notebook LM team of podcasters. Why are you spinning? You said you were ready. Oh, it said this may take 10 to 20 seconds. Anyway, available. It's a free download. You can use it a certain amount without logging in, I think. So
it's really amazing. I mean, the one on the desktop
is mind-boggling.
It's so much. I've thrown books in there, and I'm amazed at books that I've read.
Yeah.
The podcast, sometimes a little corny, but
it's pretty corny. Yeah.
But it's still, if you want, it pulls. What's interesting is always that it pulls things out of and quantify. I mean, it like crystallizes something that I just didn't think of in that book, right? You know, it just says something that's funny. That is, I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And the other thing is I use it a lot to interrogate like manuals. I throw manuals into it and just go, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? And it just immediately, you know, but it is funny. It does a podcast for the manuals. A podcast for the sound devices Scorpio is pretty hilarious. This is some really crazy stuff.
That's the only thing
about audio.
They're a little too. You know, here's our Security Now podcast.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack the latest in security and tech, pulling out the key insights for you, the learner.
Yep, lots to cover today. We've got sources touch on everything from browser security pitfalls to how your car might be spying on you,
and encryption battles, hardware security.
We don't really need security now anymore. We can
the man's voice sounds so much like someone from NPR, and I just can't quite.
It does.
Yeah,
he has
and the fact that there'll be like a catch in their breath and stuff like that just really like sells the idea that you're listening to a podcast. I like I said, I just sent this out to Apple in China today, and I can't. I'm sorry. It's the fact that I'm looking at this saying, you know what? 400 pages. That's only like 200 double page spreads. How long would it take for me to simply photograph each double page spread and put it in Notebook LM, and so that after I finish reading it, I can ask questions like, "Oh, wasn't there a section in which like there was a car chase with organized crime in Toledo?" Like, well, there wasn't anything like that. There was a time when Tim lost his luggage on a trip. Oh yeah. What page was that on? Oh, that was on page 303. Okay.
My biggest temptation to wanting to crack open ebooks is specifically just to put it. I mean, I don't know. I'm happy to pay for them. I just want to put them into LM.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like you're just kind of like.
Again, a corpus of knowledge you can then interrogate with questions.
Yeah,
where it's
incredible.
It's the problem with chatbots is that you can ask it a question and it might be getting its information from God knows where. It might be God knows how old. Whereas if you have a chatbot that says, here is the only sources of information you should ever consider when I ask you questions about this particular subject and this particular app, And even so, Notebook LM, one of the things I like about Google's overall approach to AI is that it's not trust me, bro. It's not we will do your homework for you. It's that we will help you find the information in this book that you gave us, and we will cite our sources when you ask us questions, because this is an aid to you doing this manually, not us doing your homework for you.
Exactly. I think that's why I'm likening it to Khan Academy more than anything else. It's a tool. It's a way to learn. And I think we have some amazing new ways to learn now, thanks to
they've been consistent about that since day one, since they started talking about AI at Google I/O. I like that about them.
Yep. All right, your turn, Mr. Alex Lindsay. Pick of the week.
I was excited about it, and then I was afraid that I'd be disappointed, and then I wasn't. Murderbot is so good.
It's here. Oh, it's so exciting. Yeah.
Are you enjoying it, Jason?
Love it. It's really good. It is in the spirit of the original written work, which doesn't matter.
Well, that was the question.
I don't like to
because the original work was so beloved, right?
Yeah. No, but it's in that spirit.
Skarsgård is maybe not from my point of view, the best casting for that character.
He's good at quirky. I mean, it's everybody's head cast that character, which is it's non-gendered. It's an it. Its pronouns are it, its.
He's a robot, a service robot.
And they hired a man to play the part, but but he does really the quirky aspect of that character very well. And thank you for mentioning it, Alex. The other thing I would say about it is, if you're looking at that title and are like, oh, I don't know, it's like it's
a comedy.
It's a comedy. There's science fiction action. It's set in a science fiction world, but it's also funny. It's really funny. That's kind of the point. So yeah,
sarcastic. Yeah. If you're an introvert, it's everything that goes on in your head.
Yes.
It's just like
eye contact. How long he gets it gets ordered to make eye contact in episode 2, and it's like, could I just dissolve in acid instead?
I'm gonna choose acid bath and eye contact.
I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait to see it.
We won't say anything else. I don't want to ruin anything. It's remarkably, by the way, snackable. It's much shorter. Apple's experimenting, I guess, on shorter content.
It's not an hour?
No, it's half hour.
It is like 25
minutes. Yeah, it's more like short. I'd say the closest analog might be something like Star Trek Lower Decks, which is animated and this is live action, but it's like that in that it's sci-fi. There's sci-fi stuff in there, but it's also meant to be funny, and they're all in that kind of half-hour format, not the hour long.
And if they gave me the whole season, I probably would have sat down on Saturday and watched
it all. Yeah,
like it was so fast. It felt like it was short, but it just felt like it just evaporated.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah. All right. In the high-tech future, a rogue security robot gains free will.
Yeah.
Murderbot, new on Apple TV Plus. All right, that's it for Security Now. No. That's coming up next. That's it for MacBreak Weekly. We thank you all for being here. Sorry about the lateness of the hour. But we're so glad you could watch. If you're watching on demand, of course, it's exactly when you wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. That's the reason to subscribe in your favorite podcast client to MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko has nothing to plug
yet,
but I have daily deadlines. So
he's working.
The stress lines on my face says that hey, wow, Andy's publishing every day. Yeah,
I can't wait. I think you're going to be amazed at the response.
Well, I hope you're enjoying what I've been posting so far. It's good. As I keep wrestling with like, if I want to accept payments, what's wrong with my ID that I'm providing with? Is okay, fine. I'll give you another. It's like, okay, I guess that's another week of content. All the people will have
amazing,
waiting for
isn't
them when
it?
they set up.
Yeah. What a world we live in. Not as easy as it should be. Well, good luck. IHNATKO. Keep that, in the back. Maybe use maybe just a little notification in the background that could just pop up when the site comes out. Something like that. That would be kind of cool. Maybe we could get Andy to write something for pushover.
Vibe code it.
Vibe code it, Andy. Put it on my watch. That's Jason
I'll add it to my free time.
6colors.com. All 6 of them.
All 6.
Fantastic site. Lots of great shows, including Upgrade, where you go on a California CarPlay road trip.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that CarPlay Ultra stuff. It's interesting.
And
stuff.
The new home of Glenn Fleischman's Help and How To.
Yeah.
I think that's great too. Congratulations on scoring Glenn. We're really pleased about that. You make a dead Mac cry. He's very funny. He is. He is that
He's a character.
He's a character. Sixcolors.com. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Alex Lindsay, officehours.global, Q&Aing every morning of the week.
Every morning. So we're Q&Aing. There's no change to the Q&A. Every morning at 7 a.m. we get up on Pacific Standard Time and we answer questions. They're always good. Like we've now answered like almost 60,000 questions.
Wow.
And you're always like, this is going to be the day. And sometimes we get up there and it'll be like 7 a.m. and there'll be like 4 questions in there. And we're like, oh, this is going to be a really short show. No, we send some back at the end. Yeah. And so we have some great conversations there. Also on Gray Matter, we had Paul Liberator, who is a rock and roll journalist here from Marin, who kind of really grew up in the whole rock and roll world. And so it was a fun conversation. So that's graymatter.show.
Graymatter.show. Paul Liberatore. I look like a rock and roller. I am a rock and roller. Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC, except for today. But we'll be back on schedule next week. Don't forget June 9th, WWDC. If you're a club member, you can watch that in our Club Twit Discord. We'll talk about it the following day, June 10th. And I guess all I can say now is, well, it's time to get back to work because break time is over. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey, focus up. That is what I said to Hands on Tech when we looked at the relaunch. It is time for us to focus on one topic at a time and make sure we're answering that question. I am answering that question as thoroughly as possible. If you are a member of Club Twit, you can watch the video version of this show completely ad-free. Of course, listen to the audio version ad-free. If you're not a member, the show will still be available to you in both ways. You can watch the video on YouTube with ads, or you can watch the audio as you always have. Listen to the audio as you always have in our feeds. In any case, you gotta tune in to Hands on Tech because I guarantee there's going to be a question you're going to want to have the answer to. And from time to time, I also review a gadget, a gizmo, or something of the sort. You gotta check out Hands on Tech, and I can't wait to get your question.